Oh. It just removes your filter.
Is it on?
Okay, thanks. Okay, welcome to the Town of Litchfield Board of Selectmen's meeting for October 14th, 2013. We'll start by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the board's just coming out of a manifest and paperwork review. First up in the agenda is review of items of consent. In the consent folder for this evening, we have the minutes of September 23rd, the minutes for September 30th, the approval of payroll for $44,316.90, and the approval for accounts payable for $41,827. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to be approved.
Motion made by Mrs. Jewett to approve the consent items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bork. Further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1-0.
Abstained because I was absent for one of those meeting dates.
Yeah, the 23rd, no, 30th, sorry.
30th, I think.
30th.
So that vote would actually be 3-0-1.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, you're right. 3-0-1. All right, speaking of the September 30th meeting, before we go into the rest of the agenda, I'd like to clarify some actions that happened on that day. Just pull my notes up here. The September 30th meeting was a out-of-schedule meeting that we posted, but we learned after the meeting was conducted that some of our postings may have not been where we thought they were. So I'd like to make a motion that this board reaffirms or affirms all the actions taken by the Board of Selectmen that evening, just to make sure that we're all covered and there's no issues. Most of the discussion from that meeting was related to the budget, recommendations going to the Budget Committee. I don't believe there was any other activity that evening but for budgets. So I will make a motion that we reaffirm the Board of Selectmen's meeting of September 30th, 2013, as noted in our, or as documented in our minutes of September 30th.
I'll second.
Okay, motion been made by myself, seconded by Mr. Bork. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0-1.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I was not at that meeting, so.
Thank you. And this is a point of clarity too. Going forward, to ensure that we make sure we have the proper postings, what I would say is, use a probably a bad word, wrong word, but the legal places that we're going to be putting it in for public review is Town Hall, and it will also be posted on the town website under the agenda section on the calendar. It may also be posted in many other locations because we do pass this document out to all the administrations for the school district and other facilities, but we just want to make sure that we can surely say it's always posted. So those are the two locations going forward. Okay. That being said, request for items of the business. Do they have anything?
I have two items, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to review, or just have a brief discussion on the billing from our town council.
Okay, building town council, okay.
And I'd also like to discuss the Conservation Commission budget.
Okay. All right, and I'd like to also add on just a clarification. I'd like to make a recommendation to the board for a clarification around our public input. I have some language I'd like to see posted on the website that will hopefully help the public understand what we're doing and how we do it. So we'll do that in other business. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none. Time on the schedule now is for public input. Anybody from the public like to speak to the board or address the community, please step forward. Hearing and seeing nobody, we'll close public input. Moving on to administrative report, new business, the 2013 budget projections.
2013 budget projections. I've worked through So I normally tend to do this time, or actually usually a little bit later in the year, a full line-by-line projection of anticipated spending for 2013. Based on what I'm seeing now, we should be close to 96% of budget by year end.
What is that in terms of dollars residual?
About 70,000. I err a little bit on the side of caution when doing this, so that number may adjust, as the year wraps up. I try not to be overly optimistic at this point.
I know you've asked I know you've asked the department heads where they're gonna come in on their budgets. That's factoring in their known
Yeah.
costs coming forward. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I went through and kind of ran my numbers, and then, I've been gradually working through with departments in places that weren't obvious, or I had questions, or, I was wondering where trends were going. So, and it's also consistent with what I would expect this year. You can recall the past couple years, we've had somewhat higher year-end balances, and some of that has been we've had unusual circumstances those years and operations of different departments, lack of winter, first year of moving away from the incinerator. We had a number of different things in there. I mean, this year it's a default budget. Things have pretty much run as we've expected. So this is about where I would expect to be. The other thing that to just kind of keep in the back of the mind is, unlike those past couple of years where we've had those circumstances, the prospect of applying funds from the end of this year toward removing items from next year's proposed budgets, as we've been able to do in the past, will be somewhat limited this year based on what I see now. And in addition, we'll probably not be in a position to make some of the larger chunks of fund balance replenishment we've done in previous years. You can recall, past couple of years, we've put in $80,000 to $100,000 back into fund balance from unspent appropriations. Again, the good news is we're in good shape. We're about where we should be. We're probably a little tighter than, my anxious head would like to be.
90,000?
What? About the 70 to 80,000.
80,000. And so, does that impact our ability to do the offset this year? I know we've committed to something like
No,
$200,000.
no, because the money we talked about offsetting this year's tax rate's already in the fund balance.
Okay.
The challenge will be, based on where this is, you're not going to be replenishing as much in the fund balance next year from the unspent expense side.
Okay.
You may still pick some more up in revenues as the year goes on and the like. And again, there are some, for everything that I can pretty well finely tune, there's some big projections in there too. Obviously, winter weather, if we have lots of winter weather or no winter weather, that can blow my number way out of proportion. I mean, I estimated a couple storms between now and the end of the year.
Should the board, which we've done in the past, put a restraint on the department heads expending greater than, say, $3,000,
No.
$5,000?
No.
Why?
We have reasonable place within the budget. All departments are operating reasonably. There's no reason to kind of do a big level stop spending. We're not in that kind of position.
Yeah, I know we do that at some point in time, but I'm not sure October is the right time. I guess, my suggestion, if we're gonna do it, is do it in November, looking at your projection and see how it's lining. If it's lining up perfectly and it's macking out, then department heads have been managing their budgets well, and why would we get in the way of that?
So can we get then something that's a little bit different going forward, which would be, I'll call it a comparison of Jason's analysis against actuals, I'm gonna call it, so that way we know if we're trending tighter or looser?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is, and I update this, as I normally do this. I mean, I'll be updating those variables at least monthly. So I will, if the trend is going the wrong way, I'll let you know. And I can give you this status each month.
And that's fine. I think we want to stay close to it. Let's have a review. I know we're going to talk about our November meetings, but I'm assuming the first meeting in November, let's have that check-in point, see where we're at, and if the board feels differently, we want to put a stop to it, we can make a decision then. If your projections are lining up perfectly and there's been no impact at this point, we can make a decision one way or the other. And if you can publish whatever you're using to track, so we can review it online, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. I mean, it's not the most user-friendly document because it's my tool. It's not a shared tool. But I mean, I have no you can certainly look at it,
I would
but,
just open it up for read, so
Sure.
people have questions. And like I said, let's, I'm assuming our first meeting's gonna be the 4th, but
Yeah.
the first meeting in November, let's have it as an item on the agenda, and let's
Yep.
make sure all members of the board are comfortable with either leaving it open or locking it down. And we'll go from there, if that makes sense.
I'd prefer to do it in the first part of November instead of the end of November, because we're really gonna hit cold and snow
Yeah.
then.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think what's important is Jason,
Definitely.
it's, what's factored in there, as the department heads would, is a couple of storms. The things that, the big expense item is gonna be storms, unless, assuming we don't have any public safety issues.
Yep.
Um,
You know, and I talk to department heads about this stuff on a regular basis. You know, this isn't sort of, once a month I talk to departments about it. I mean, we talk on a regular basis about this, and obviously these, you know, with where these numbers are.
The last time you got together with mosquito control?
Departments who I'm worried about over expense. So our biggest departments, police, fire,
Highway.
highway, solid waste, town clerk, tax collector.
The biggest, I wanna say, the biggest expense is.
Right. The ones that have day-to-day staff that I see every day, we talk about it.
Okay, if there's no objection to that, to moving that way, we can
Yep.
move on to the next item. Hawkers and peddlers ordinance?
Yeah. I think I mentioned at some point earlier this year that we needed to revise the section of our hawkers and peddlers license. State police told us FBI wanted to see revised language in the background check portion to allow continued federal background checks. I provided an update for you. Chief O'Brien has incorporated the recommended language into Section 5J of this. It's been reviewed by state police and FBI. You'll notice if you look at this ordinance that there's a number attached to the top. The FBI needs an ordinance number.
Of course I do.
So we gave it an ordinance number. So I'd suggest here, you know, that we review and then we'll schedule formal approval at a future meeting. If you look at the actual document, I've noted while we were here, we made a few cosmetic corrections along the way, and I flagged all those items as well, if there are any questions on any of those.
Does it procedurally, do we have to have, is this just an act of the board, or do we have to go public hearing?
We should note it as a public hearing, because it is an ordinance.
And how soon do we wanna,
If you're gonna make a public hearing, then I'd suggest to the board, approve the policy tonight for public hearing on a certain date. That way, the public has access to the document. If you
Sure.
don't do it that way, then the public has no idea what you're gonna do at the hearing.
Right.
is any, I mean, I read the draft originally when it got posted. I had no objections to the additions. Does anybody have any concerns with making a motion to approve it tonight? Okay, not hearing any. I'll make a motion that we approve the hawkers and peddlers ordinance as noted, or as reviewed, ordinance number 2013-10-01. Thank you, FBI.
Isn't that the same amount that we've been having right along on the hawkers and peddlers license fee?
The fee?
Oh, yeah, we didn't change.
When would you bring this to
Why
meeting?
wouldn't we
That's what I was
change
gonna
it?
think about.
Everything else has gone up. I think that, personally, from my own experience this summer,
Thing is,
I would have been
we have on the
happier
agenda
to
about
raise it up.
scheduling
I know,
for November, right?
yeah.
Wonder if
I would say we'll bring it to the second meeting in November. I just don't know what date that's gonna be yet until we decide.
Yes. Okay, second meeting in November, that's fine.
So that's part of the motion.
Okay.
So a motion was made to approve the hawkers and peddlers ordinance and to have a public hearing set for the second meeting in November, which we'll discuss those dates later in the meeting tonight. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been seconded by Mr. Bork. Further discussion?
I just think with, everything else has gone up, fees for everything. I think that should go up.
Well, this doesn't contain fees, I don't believe, does it? Like-
Yeah, it does, it does contain,
$5
Why
a
why
day.
do we have license fees in here is a question? And why not put those as separate license fees within the ordinance for license fees? That way you're only changing you're not changing everything.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm
Yep.
saying?
yep,
That makes sense.
that's fine.
Do we want to amend it, amend the motion, strike it, change the word to reference our published license fees, and then be done with it? Can't really amend my own motion, so.
Yeah, so we change it to, as published on the current, we'll keep a section for fees, and the fee language will be license fees for this ordinance will be on the prevailing schedule of town fees. On your question, I do want to look, I have like the sinking feeling that there may be some state law governing how much or how little we can charge for those, so before I recommend, go change it, I want to check that, because I think we may be limited there.
I just think with the amount of hanky-panky of not so nice things going on, not just in Litchfield, but in the country in general, that I think that the fewer people that we have walking around that we don't know who they are and all, I just think would be a good idea. And if they're selling something, I know I had one person come twice to my house in a 10-day period trying to do my roof, and my roof was done about 5 years ago, and I know it was done and done properly, and I've had no problem, so I just think, I
So,
just don't like a lot of people going around.
so we need to, if we're gonna do that, we need to make I need an amendment for section 4 to change the wording.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to amend section 4 to refer to the list of town fees, and rather than have this in the document. That way we don't have to keep changing the document.
I second it.
Amendment made by Mr. Byron, seconded by Mrs. Jewett. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 4-0-0. Now back to the amended main motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 4-0-0. So Jason, you'll make the wording change, and then, like I said, when we discuss the November meetings, we'll confirm the second meeting date. We'll carry on. All right, moving on. Health trust rate hearings.
Health Trust rate hearings. Attached in the portal, the slides from Health Trust's rate hearing. It was, I think, last week. It was a Thursday night, so I didn't attend. What they're projecting across the whole pool is an increase of around 6.3% for health and 0% for dental. So just bear in mind, those are aggregate numbers. Our own numbers will likely be slightly different, and hopefully I'll be getting those in the next couple weeks. As you know, they give us sort of a not to exceed number. But this at least big picture for the whole health trust gives you a sense of range, we're,
So 7%?
6.3.
Yeah, I thought it was 6.8, but.
Oh, sorry, 6.3, so,
6.3% for health.
for health, and no increase for dental. So.
And is that a max, or is that what it's gonna be?
That's none of the above. That is what they have seen across the whole trust. Because they were rated with the school group, the history for us has been that our rating tends to yield a lower rate increase than the big pool-wide numbers are. Because remember, the backside of it, when we looked earlier this year, and we're concerned that if we were no longer rated with the school, that our rates would go up higher. So, this is just to kind of give the initial ballpark that they talked about in their hearings. So-
So we still have a 7% not to exceed. Didn't we lock in the health?
No, we don't lock in health. We lock in, we lock in workers' comp, and we lock in property liability. So, but that's just to give you a
So
sense.
we're assuming not to exceed something around 7%.
Yeah, right. I mean, this gives you a ballpark. I mean, and obviously you've had years where it's been 1 and you've had years where it's been 15. So this at least gets you, hey.
And when do they say they're gonna give us the rate?
We hopefully will have them. We usually get them end of October, beginning of November, so.
Okay. Any other discussion around this? All right, moving on, Darapon Wells.
Darapon Wells. The board received a letter from a Litchfield resident that had been sent to the town of Hudson regarding the draw from the wells in Darapond. That letter yielded, and of course, and we've been copied on all of these while we have not been a party to them directly. Hudson's legal counsel responded to that resident and again copied us. That resident then responded again and sent all of that to everyone via email. As I said, we're not a direct party in this yet. Not sure how this will evolve. Conservation Commission has advised me that at this point, Conservation Commission is not involved in this as a commission. Although it should be noted that
He's a sitting member of
the
the-
resident is a member of the
Which
commission.
is like, how do you separate yourself from the fact that you sit on that commission, and the reason why you sit on that commission is because you have conservation desires?
But he wrote that letter on his own.
Okay.
But he pulled the town in it by copying the town, the conservation committee, the building inspector, I mean, all out of courtesy, but in a way, it looks like it's coming from the conservation commission.
Right.
So, obviously, as the last flurry went out last week, I've forwarded the whole package to our council as well for awareness if needed, and
Has the chair of the conservation commission made any statement or have anything to say about it? As far as, do they have any?
yeah, at this point, the commission is not involved as a commission.
If I saw in the packet, there are letters from the commission that date back to 2009.
R-
It's like there's like internal documentation that looks like.
There's history,
Yeah.
but it is not a current
Okay.
item there.
So at this point, it's informational and our council is aware of it. Have they recommended or made any suggestions?
Nothing at this point. She read through it and was aware of what was there. So,
Okay. Does the board have any questions or thoughts? Like I said, I have my challenge is he's a
At
member.
this point, just, keep us informed, right?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure that the Conservation Commission should be instructed that if they are going to get involved in it, that they should inform the Board of Selectmen, because there are potential legal implications to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
The individual involved has threatened lawsuit to the town of Hudson, and I think that if the Conservation Commission steps in, which now potentially hazards the town, the Board of Selectmen need to be aware of that.
I guess I would
I
ask
agree.
that we send a communication, you can copy me on it, or copy the whole board on it, see, but basically let them know that they need to give us a heads up. And the heads up should be before they decide to get involved, not after.
okay.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? All right, moving on. Fire department fire danger sign.
New fire danger sign. Passed along a message from fire chief. They're looking to install a new Smoky Bear sign that shows the daily fire danger to replace the aging tree-shaped sign that's on the building. What they're looking at is installing that sign on the riverside of Charles Bancroft, south of the fire station on town property.
Also, it's probably seen better from both sides.
So it's probably more visible.
Is
there.
that, would that be town property on the other side?
Yeah, there is town property on the other
That was-
side.
I believe Kevin knows that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows a lot of things.
Well, I know.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's-
There's some sort of sign there now, isn't there? It's not a fire sign.
No, there's another,
Landmark.
there's a monument
Oh.
sign there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, part of the
An Eagle
spec-
An Eagle
Yeah.
Scout in the past has put up I'll call it an informational notice to people that used to be the old, it's a historical site,
Mm-hmm.
first off. And two things about it. One, it used to be the old parade ground or the training ground for the Minutemen from Litchfield.
Oh.
And that used to go out, the river wasn't there at the time.
Right.
And there used to be a cemetery beyond that, as I understand it.
The river wasn't there before?
No, the river was further over.
Oh, really?
And in fact, wiped out a bunch of the cemetery,
Yeah, I
wiped
know
out the
that- I
cemetery, and
remember
that's
that
where they
story.
moved it in back of
Yep.
the church. There's two things, if I could talk about this.
Sure.
There's a requirement in 674-54 for government use of property. And as the planning board is responsible for signs, there may be a question as to whether we should or not use 674-54 and notice and do the appropriate things for putting up a sign. The second thing is because of the historical nature of that property, which is the parade grounds and everything else, I think that the fire department should at least consult with the historical society, and I'm not saying they have to come to an agreement or whatever, but they should at least consult with them before.
And the piece of talking with the Historical Society as well as part of that land is actually Conservation Commission land, and then there's sort of there's a bigger picture too of the right spots for sight lines and visibility in that whole section. So as we've
There's-
talked about it here, we've hit all of these little loose ends that we want to make sure.
Two properties that may be being conflated here.
Mm-hmm.
There's the old parade grounds, okay, but north of the church's parsonage house there is conservation property which goes to the river, and that property is supposed to be used for a boat launch ramp, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's the one you're thinking of, but I thought that the property, if he said he's gonna go south of the parsonage, then he's gonna be going onto the parade ground.
Yeah, he's on, right,
If he's going north of the parsonage, then he'd be on the conservation property.
right.
I don't think the two of them are together, that's what I'm saying.
Well, okay, yeah.
They're both town property, and we just gotta make sure that,
That whoever else is a party on that land, that we want to bring them into the conversation before
And-
we pick the site.
And we need to determine whether 674-54 is, yeah, 674-54 is, got some weight in this whole discussion, because
what is 67454? What does it read as?
674-54 is zoning and land use, where it says basically if, well, towns are not required to submit to zoning or land use requirements of municipalities, they are required to take particular action in terms of noticing the public of what they're intending to do. And
Just to put up a
That's-
sign? It's
I can-
poles,
I
the
can
erection, installation, and maintenance of pole structures, conduit
Yep.
cables, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, because it is a local land use control that we hold others to, so,
No, I'm.
right.
So, I mean, you can put that in there, I don't care. But it's something that we just,
Okay.
not
So,
against the sign one way or the other,
No,
I'm just saying.
yeah,
So
I
is
mean,
the chief working on, will the chief be working with these parties, or?
yeah, I wanted to run the idea past, make sure there was no issue as we kind of work through the procedural hoops of
No, I.
where it is
I
and
think
who
the
it
fire
is,
pit
and,
sign that's up there now, you don't see it all unless you look.
yeah, I think
Having
this is a
something
great
that's closer
idea.
to the road would be ideal. I mean, the other option is just don't put it across, if it becomes too much of a flack to get it done, for whatever reason,
Mhm.
keep it on the side of the property, there's plenty of land in front to do it, in front of the parking lot, although I agree that the other side would be a better site from a
Yeah.
site perspective.
Right,
But I like the idea of having it.
okay, so good.
You may be able to put it, actually, it's not conservation, it's state property. You may be able to put it on the state property, I don't know.
Oh, God, that'll take
I've
me
got
another
boat-
year.
Boat launch ramp.
Yeah.
Well, you've got pull with the governor. And plus, once you get that bumper sticker on your car,
Oh, man.
get rid of those empty paint cans.
I thought the boat landing was up further on Jefferson's property, which would be up by the library.
My understanding on it was just to the other side of the, I may be calling it the wrong thing, but it was the parsonage,
Yes, that's where the food pantry
the
is
food
now.
pantry and stuff. It was just to the north of there. I don't know how far, but I
Yeah.
thought it was just north of that. And that was supposed to be developed by Fish and Game, and then Fish and Game backed out of it because the bank was too steep. And it will only be something where you could access it, excuse me, by, for canoes, kayaks, stuff like that. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Okay. Moving on, November's meeting schedule.
November meeting schedule.
Yeah, so we kind of alluded to it already.
Yeah, suggesting that we adjust our November meeting schedule to the first and third Mondays in November rather than the second and fourth. The second Monday is Veterans Day, and we are closed. Fourth Monday is the Monday right after Thanksgiving. So, we'll have a shorter week leading into that. So I would recommend that you move your meetings to the 4th and the 18th in November.
I personally have no issue either way.
I have no issue neither.
I do agree we need other meetings, so I'd rather not miss any.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion the Board of Selectmen conducts its meetings for the month of November on the 4th, and what was the other date?
The 18th.
18th, yeah.
I'll second it. Motion made by Mr. Byron, seconded by Mr. Brunel. Further discussion? I'd just say, Jason, can we make sure the online calendar gets adjusted
Yes.
appropriately? And that the cable committee is notified of the change of schedule?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the meeting schedule change, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 4-0-0.
And, Mr. Chairman, for the meeting of November 4th,
Mhm.
I would like to have a non-public session. Actually, it's not a non-public session, it's not a session of the board whatsoever, but it is a non-public meeting of the board to discuss negotiations of the union.
Okay.
And it will take us, I'm guessing, about an hour.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's probably on the high end, but that gives us a
It gives us
cushion.
a good time.
Are we okay with starting at 5 and doing it prior to the meeting?
I'm fine with it, I just,
On the 4th?
On the
whatever you guys want to do.
I like earlier the better, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine.
If everybody can make it at 5 o'clock, we have to notice it, so.
Yep.
Let's make it at 5, and then, go from there. It wasn't a motion, right? You were just making a statement, right? I've already lost the words. All right, so we'll meet at 5 o'clock for the, non-public meeting, non-meeting of the board. I'm not sure how that even works, but we'll figure out what the RSA needs to be
Yeah,
and all
well,
that stuff.
yeah.
For the contract review. Okay, and we'll do that at 5 o'clock. All right, next,
Do we have to ask the police department if they're gonna be available in?
No,
'Cause
This is our review,
It's not
right?
a regular night, that's what I'm thinking.
this is our review, not theirs, right?
yeah, this is our review of what we've negotiated. So it's not with them. It's just with our negotiating group and the chief.
Okay.
Right, and Chief O'Brien, I'd like him if he could be there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, let's make sure we send an invite to Chief O'Brien and make sure he can be there. Somebody has to be there. Please. All right, moving on to the next item, prosecutor contract renewal.
Prosecutor, yes. I alluded to this a little bit at the last meeting. I had the paperwork. I didn't want to spring it on everybody last meeting that day. Contract renewal for period ending September 30th for police prosecutor. Price is unchanged from the previous year. The only change we've made was a revision to the indemnification, Section 6, after review with Property Liability Trust. They've also shared a note from Chief O'Brien recommending continued appointment. Notes Mr. McCaffrey has performed his duties to my satisfaction, brings a real professionalism to the courts. He's very engaging, proficient in his duties, and has a genuine zest to do his best. I meet with Mr. McCaffrey at least 2 times a week regards to cases and keeping in mind what is in the best interest of the state. He is intelligent and understands more than just the black and white of the laws. I would recommend continued contract through 2014 for prosecutor services. That's from Chief O'Brien.
Everybody's had an opportunity to review the contract?
Yep.
Right? And the letter I know got posted, I think, last week or something like that, because I know I asked the chief.
Yeah.
To send a letter. We didn't want to assume that he was in agreement. Does anybody have any concerns?
So Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen renews the contract of prosecutor Lonnie McCaffrey for, what's the period? 1 year?
1 year.
For a period of 1 year.
A second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Byron, seconded by Mr. Bork. Just a question, Jason. I know that we extended the municipal prosecutor appointment to today.
Yeah, through tomorrow, yeah.
Do we have to make a motion now to make him the
No,
prosecutor?
your approval of the contract,
Yes.
yes, the first
Okay.
paragraph or second paragraph says, "We hereby appoint you as municipal prosecutor."
Does he get sworn in, by the way, is a dumb question?
I think it's one by the chief, right?
Yeah, I think he does by the chief.
No, it doesn't matter who does it.
Because because the thing is, the appointment as the municipal prosecutor is really key to this, and that's sort of woven into some of the adjustments we made. When you appoint the prosecutor, that grants him immunity. Because he then becomes a public
Oh,
official.
well, I'm gonna,
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 4-0-0. Moving on to the next item, tax rate setting.
Tax rate setting, yeah, we had a bit of an adventure last week. Department of Revenue announced last week initially that because of the way adequacy aid is being calculated under state law, Department of Education would not finalize adequacy aid numbers until November 7th, meaning that they weren't going to start setting tax rates till after that date, which would create all sorts of havoc. As you can imagine, there was an immediate firestorm amongst municipal officials. I think every representative, senator, executive counselor, and associated commissioner got an earful in some form or fashion. I know our own reps were helpful in kind of pushing that message as well. Amazingly, within a day, they found another way to deal with that problem. So it looks as if tax rates should be able to be set without further delay.
When?
I don't know that yet.
So the date's still not.
But they will be, right, we have no date set, but they weren't even going to start setting dates till after November 7th. So I am expecting that sometime over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a date from the state.
And that's gonna be
And
that same process with the spreadsheet.
it's,
upload.
yeah, I mean, the good news is they have streamlined it. I mean, the old days, you'd go to Concord, you have a bushel of paper, and it would take forever and a day. Now you get a spreadsheet and you can be done it in, I mean, I've set the tax rate the last 2 years in 10 minutes, so
Right.
it's just when we get our place in line,
Okay.
so.
Any questions?
It is not going to affect the people's tax bills coming later then, so they're going to be still due on December 1st.
They will be due December 1st or 30 days after they're mailed, whichever is later.
I know there was a question that was inquired on Facebook about it. I believe I saw the office responded.
Yes.
The question came back, but they're due November 1st.
Yes, and then I responded
Okay.
that it is December 1st or it's December 1st or 30 days after they're sent, whichever is later. So,
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, moving on to request for a stop sign at the end of Dara Pond driveway onto Woodhawk. I believe this request was made by Mr. Byron.
mhm.
so, I live down off of Woodhawk Way. And I can tell you that when I drive north, drive west towards Albuquerque on Woodhawk Way, I end up at times, if there's activities going on at the park, having people just blow right out of the park right in front of me.
Yeah.
Several times there have been near misses. My wife has experienced the same thing, and I know other people who are in that area who have also experienced the same thing. My recommendation would be just simply to install a stop sign where the exit to the park comes onto Woodhawk Way so that people know simply enough to stop there, look for traffic, and then proceed if the way's clear. And I would recommend to the board that we install that type of a stop sign there, or have the road agent install one, and go forward from there.
So, I don't have any objection to doing it myself personally, because obviously I'm probably one of the folks that thinks it's a driveway and just pull right out. But I look and I make sure something's coming, but, is a stop sign enforceable there though? I think it's more of a visual cue.
I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna let Mr. Hope jump in.
Go ahead.
And if he wants to put his hand
To
up
me,
my
it's a visual
shirt and-
cue, and that's fine, people should stop
It is primarily a visual cue. There are certain times and conditions when it's considered a public way, because, and there are times that it's not. We keep a list and have to approve, the list of where we have of traffic control devices like stop signs and the like.
Right.
Because it is coming out of a driveway, it isn't always considered a way. I had an interesting conversation again today with Chief O'Brien and Sergeant O'Donohue about this very thing. So, that said, there's a stop sign there. And most people will see and respond to a stop sign.
Absolutely.
And, in the off chance that it doesn't meet in the timing and conditions of it being a public way, if you blow through a stop sign and cause an incident and you ignored the advice of a stop sign, you're being cited for unsafe operation. So it's somewhat negligible. Now, the point that they brought up, which I think is the piece that we're going to have to put some cleverness, is not about enforcement or not about the value of having a stop sign there, but the very technical question of where exactly can you mount, because of the flare of the intersection, where exactly can you put the stop sign so it is actually visible at an appropriate place to stop? So.
Well, you only need it on one side of the road,
Yeah, but
unless you want them to stop going in.
no.
So I would suggest you put it on the side of the road at the exit.
It's not quite that simple. When you look at the angle and the taper and the flare,
That's why I
we
think people tend to drive right out, because
Yeah.
it's curved like you're just leaving in the driveway.
yeah.
The
So
question is, do we put the stop sign actually on Woodhawk Way and make people stop before they cross over?
yeah,
I mean, I think putting a stop sign there, even with the flare, it's still a visual cue. It will make people stop.
yeah. That's
Maybe.
Well,
that's sort of the underlying message is, I think it makes sense to do it. There's some logistical issues there because generally you want to put the stop sign in the appropriate around the line where you would like people to stop. And I think the concern was with the flare that may not be where you put it. We can work around. We'll figure that out.
Sure, greater minds than mine will figure it out, yeah.
Yeah. We can.
I think it's important to have one there.
Yeah.
I know once a kid's been in there playing, teenagers, and they're all excited because they won, and then they're heading out for Romano's or Haley's for pizza, and they kind of forget that they should be real careful. In fact, I've even seen people coming out of Woodhawk Way and right onto Albuquerque without stopping at all. They're really
Well,
excited.
part of the problem, I mean, I don't want to get into Woodhawk Way, but part of the problem is the location of the Darapon sign. Blocks your
you
view
kind
of
of
traffic,
way out, yeah.
your view of traffic up Albuquerque. But that's another issue.
Well, that being said, with them cleaning up that frontage there, there may be an opportunity to take that sign and put it in the corner like this out of the way, so you can see it, trying to do a V with it instead, up back, but again, that's another problem for another day. Okay, I guess we need to make a motion on requesting the road agent to put a sign up. I'm assuming he has these signs readily available, because he tends to have
The stop is a pretty common sign for us. So
I mean, I'll make a motion that we instruct the road agent to install a stop sign in the appropriate location at the entranceway of Darapon Driveway onto Woodhawk Way.
Second it.
Okay, motion been made and seconded by Mrs. Jewett. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 400. All right, stop sign will be installed. Okay, moving on to old business, the 2014 budgets. How's that old business? That's current business, my friend.
Not yet,
well, it's not new business yet, but
almost.
all right. So couple things on this. I've been keeping a list, or I've started a list, the sheet that I've shared here called Budget 14 Adjustments. Some of the things that have come in where I have new or improved information since we last approved. I'm kind of keeping the running tally of those. And I'd suggest, as we've done kind of in previous years, late, once we get all of these, we do them all at once rather than pick at them one week, one the other week, so we can keep track of all of them. None of these reflect any actual revisiting of anything. That's just sort of, hey, I told you we had a bill coming, I got the bill, the actual bill was less, we're fine. The second sheet is one that is called Budget Committee Changes. And so this is the rolling list of those items as the Budget Committee approves budgets. When they make changes to individual lines, I've been kind of logging all those here. Again, at some point in the process, remember, we need to have you guys revisit all of those and say whether your recommended budget will reflect the Budget Committee's or will stay at your original rate. Because I actually have to report those two numbers to DRA.
I disagree with that. We don't have to agree with the budget committees.
Whether or not you agree, that's the question you have to consider.
All that we have to do is propose a budget. That goes on to the MS7,
Right.
okay? And the budget committee is the final arbiter of what the budget is.
Mm-hmm.
Our numbers will be different. Why do we have to then adjust our numbers to match the budget committee?
You don't have to adjust your numbers to match the Budget Committee. What you have done in prior years have been to consider the changes that the Budget Committee has made and decide, yes, we agree with those, we will incorporate those into our proposed budget, or no, we don't agree with those, and we stay with our original budget.
But that complicates and goes against what the recommendation that goes on the MS7 is all about. I mean, if, nowhere in budgeting do you end up changing your budget to match the budget committees. If the board made a decision that we thought $100 was the right amount, and the budget committee says, no, it's $50, then on the MS7, it should say the Board of Selectmen recommended 100, Budget Committee recommended 50, and that's it.
And in the past 3 years, you have considered them.
Clearly, last year we did do that. We considered it, and we said, we agree with your bottom line. We went back, we agreed, we balanced it, we prioritized, we kind of shuffled the numbers around, and went back to the budget committee and said, look, we think these are still our priorities. We can work within the bottom line, but this is how we're gonna remanage it. And that is what we did. I think we just go with the bottom line.
If you're talking that what you want to do is go back and challenge the budget committee with new information on a particular item, that's fine, I don't have
Yeah,
a
and I
problem
think
with that.
we did that last year. a little
Okay,
bit too,
but
so.
the other item that we've always done is historically gone back and said, when we have end-of-year funds, can we apply them to items that the budget committee has recommended to the citizens as budget items
Mhm.
to decrease the cost to our citizens? And that's a different issue than what I think you're talking about.
But we've also done the same thing in that, where the budget committee's pulled something out of the budget, said you need to go to warrant, and then we've done it with end-of-year funds to get it done this year too. So we've done that also.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep,
if that-
and we've also looked at places where the Budget Committee with another set of eyes has said, we think this number can be lower, and then we go back and look and say, hey, with the benefit of a couple more months, we agree.
My point in this whole thing is, if we're just going to take a vote to change the budget that we recommend to the budget committee, to match the budget committee, then what we're ending up doing is basically negating any benefit or any use of the MS7 form. It doesn't make any sense.
I think the major change in for the MS7 is really when we actually lock down the rates for around health and other variable numbers that we always have there. When we do that final vote, whatever that number is, and I think what we have done in the past, we've actually accepted some of the budget committee numbers at the same time. And to your point, is we don't have to. We just gotta lock down, when we went forward, this budget to the budget committee, here's our adjusted numbers for health and so on. We vote that number, that's the number that gets recorded in the MS7. So, I don't think we need to split hair over it.
All right, well, this is where their changes are being logged. You can do with them what you wish to do with them, but this way you know what's happening so
This is
far.
clear, so we know where the
Right.
reductions have been, and
Right,
Can you
know.
hang this on somewhere so we can always find it?
Yeah, I'll keep the 2014 open as a regular, I mean, between now and January, this 2014 budget is going to be an open,
Put it in document somewhere, I don't care.
yeah, but I'll keep it in
yeah, just,
the meeting stuff
You know, we
too.
have the 2014 budget, the actual spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Just put that there with it too, so we have. a
Yeah,
link to it.
that's, and because the other piece that I have on here is that third sheet,
Depending.
which is pending, which are, open items that have come up as we here have reviewed budget so far and said, hey, we need to go back and review these somehow.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's fine. And I know, like, for example, the phone one, we've got 1 month, we'll get 2 months in before we actually finalize the IT budget. The
Right.
budget committee hasn't voted on the IT budget yet anyway,
Right.
so we need to kind of.
We've talked about health trust surplus and the like. There was a question about the municipal association dues.
We still don't have an answer for that yet?
I don't have a new number. I mean, I talked to executive director who said that they're still finalizing what they expect those numbers to be. She said, expect that, your rate will probably see an increase somewhere in the vicinity of 10%. The comment was that,
That's $600.
yeah, the comment was that because they had a certain number of shared services when they were bundled together with what is now health trust and property liability trust, some of those things they now need to find a way to provide themselves rather than the shared employee, and so there's an added cost for that as part of the unbundling.
Are we taking the opportunity to go through that now, or, because I'll make a motion to eliminate NHMA dues, if we're discussing this now.
It's not on the agenda, but we can.
Well, right, and this is where I intended to bring it
Yeah.
into the conversation.
So, is that gonna be, is that a motion?
Well, first off, I don't know if Jason's done explaining his work on it or not, so I will wait for him
That's why I was gonna ask him a question more
to,
about it.
to finish with his discussion, and then we go forward from there.
Well, Jason, my question is really about, and hopefully you're gonna bring it out, but what does what does NHMA give us that if we don't pay the dues, we don't get?
What they give us in part is, a stronger voice in the legislature because they have the membership of 200 some towns and they speak on behalf of all of us as opposed to one town speaking individually. They provide the training resources. They've moved to some more webinar-based training that we've been able to participate in or share over. You will see some weeks I've shared the slides from those and the presentations from that that we have access to because we are members. The information they offer on the website after December 31st will be available for members only. And so, that's the legislative bulletins, the court updates, the town and city archives. In my case, I use the town and city archives pretty extensively for question comes up. My first place to go is there because it's not wading through the law and it's not calling council at $170 an hour and first thing. There are some questions that it makes sense to use their legal services for. We haven't done a ton of that, really. I have not done a ton of that since we've changed council. And part of that is council we work with now represents many municipalities in the state, so I sort of get that same municipal level of background. So it's a tool. It's a tool that we rely on. Can I say every year you get $6,000 worth of direct benefit to the town? No, not necessarily. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. The benefit of representing our interests in the legislature and with state agencies, I think, is helpful. When the issue came up last week, a lot of us could raise a hue and cry on the tax rate setting. It is the technical advice and credibility that comes from DRA or from NHMA to DRA and Department of Ed that finishes the deal. So, and I guess the last thing I'd point out is this is an organization that's in transition. It has been, we were used to a certain level of service when everything was under LGC, which has been the way it's been for years. The unbundling and breakup from this into 3 separate organizations, the Municipal Association, Health Trust, Property Liability, they're all still trying to figure out where they're going, what level of service is right, and what the right level of fees are. I'd hate to jump ship before they have even really brought us into the fold of figuring out where they're going next.
You done?
Sounds like he is.
Or are you just taking a breath?
No, I'm done.
I'm not sure why you had to say it that way, but okay. You want to make a motion?
Well, I will say that I disagree with Jason's analysis of why we should be responsible for joining or need to join NHMA. We don't use the legal services and haven't for quite a period of time, from what I know. Attendance at courses is still open to members who wish to attend. You just pay a slightly higher fee for it as a non-member of NHMA, and that happens all the time. Manchester, for a matter of fact, and if I'm not mistaken, Portsmouth, or is it?
Salem.
Manchester, Salem, and I think it's Somersworth are not members of or I could be wrong, but.
Not sure about the,
There's three towns, three huge towns that are not members of NHMA and have not suffered from their lack of it. NHMA will continue to legislate or to work with legislators, whether we're a member or not. And the whole issue about last time as to whether this whole thing got resolved, I think you could argue that NHMA did participate in that, but whether they're the ones that were successful in convincing DRA and the Board of Education to get their act together, or whether it was state reps raising holy hell, was another issue, because I know the governor very much got involved at that as well. So I personally just don't see that we're getting $6,000 for services, and to hear that NHMA is talking about going up in service, up in cost, rather than down in cost, is totally mind-boggling to me. I am a member for excuse me, for transparency's sake, of their Committee on Governmental Affairs, which is a committee that analyzes some of the stuff. And quite honestly, I just don't see that we're getting $6,000 worth of product from these people. So I will make a motion that we not join NHMA going forward until the board decides otherwise in some future board.
Okay, I have a motion to withdraw not to renew the NHMA membership for the upcoming year. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Yes, is there any chance that we're going to use them, something coming up in the future, a lot more, and then will our regular town school, our selectman's lawyer fees be raised up a lot more? Is there anything that we have asked of our own lawyer since we've had them, when was it, March? Did we start them?
So,
Something like that.
yeah,
I think it
so,
was March or April.
yeah.
And
So, I think Jason said it, right? Jason said that we would have to go, if there's any legal opinion required, that we would typically gone to LGC, which we have gone to LGC. over the last
we
year
use
anyway.
them, we use them incidentally. It depends on the question. It depends on the question. If I want an influence of what are other towns doing, what's the experience,
That's what
I go to them. But, honestly, right now, because our council represents,
All
you
those communities. anyway.
tell me how, I forget how many, 30, 40, 50 communities, I get that answer from council.
30,000.
Hmm?
30,000.
30.
30,000. We don't have 30,000 towns in the state.
So I think the thing is, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what kind of things will come up that we could potentially utilize them versus our own town council, but.
But I just don't want to go ahead and drop them and then have 6,000 is a pretty small amount compared to what lawyers charge. And I would hate to think we dropped them and then we went and said, oh, well, you're using us a lot more. You're going to have to pay double what you're paying. And I don't want that.
Well, that's 35 hours of lawyer time. It's a lot of lawyer time. So,
What do you think, Jason?
he's already
You're the
argued.
one that's using them.
I think it's a mistake to leave the municipal association. It is part of being a local government in this state and working with working with other local governments in the state, we get a number of resources from them. And again, as I said, I mean, they're in transition. I would be much more comfortable after we have a year of this new form behind us and say, yeah, it's worth 6,000, 6,600, or no, it's not. They're still trying to figure out where they're going. They had a breakup forced on them, kind of like AT&T, and, you know, it's not all clear yet. There's a set of resources that I use a lot from them. And, you know, when those go away, I will be less efficient in what I do. Am I going to chew up $6,000 of other resources? I'm not going to sit here and say that. You know, yeah, but, you know, there will definitely be a void in the resources that I have available to do my job.
I feel like we wouldn't be part of a team, and I feel we're a small town, and I don't notice any small towns getting out of it. The ones you told us are all one of the largest cities in the state. That's what bothers me. Why, if it's so concerning and all, why haven't other towns such as Sandown, Hooks, it's a lot
Well,
bigger
I
than
can
us.
answer possibly some of that.
Yeah.
And some of that was before this year, if I'm not mistaken. There was a requirement that in order for you to purchase insurance from NHMA, you had to be a member of
Yeah.
NHMA. And that's why a lot of towns and municipalities are members of NHMA. Now that the requirement to purchase insurance is no longer on municipalities to be a member of NHMA, that may change, Pat. That's my only point.
What advantages do you know of us for going in the other one now? And dropping NHA and then going,
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
what advantages do you see of us getting out of that now and going just with our regular lawyer?
That's what we're doing. If the motion passes, that's what we'll do.
That's what I meant, but what advantages are
We
there?
don't pay $6,000.
We
What?
save six
What are we
thousand.
losing?
We're not losing anything, because you still have access to town council. You use town council for whatever you need. Most of the time, we're going with town council's advice and not necessarily going to NHMA attorneys for their feedback.
Yeah, don't
thought it
get
was the
lost
other way
in the
around.
just the town council piece, because that is a tiny fraction of the services that we
Do you lose
provide.
access to the municipality list and all that stuff?
What?
The municipality lists and the.
Yeah,
town
oh, yeah,
lists? You
yeah.
lose all the access?
Yeah,
to
yeah,
that?
I would lose, you know, I'd lose town and city, I'd lose legislative bulletin, I'd lose the court updates,
all
I'd lose
things
the
you
town
use
and
to
city
do-
archives.
So all the things that we use to keep us up to date would go away.
Right.
How do we know,
So,
as a small town, we're just a tiny, tiny minnow in a big pond compared to all these other places? And I just don't want to feel like we're getting shortchanged and that we're going to be
I mean,
by
I
ourselves.
agree. I mean, we list the three towns that were, well, the two towns that I mentioned, Salem and Manchester. Those are
They're big.
large municipalities.
They are.
They have the resources to do some of the research work.
They
that
have
we
their
don't.
own lawyers, full-time and everything else, whereas we don't have. How often do you use a municipal association?
How often do I use, okay, leave out the legal counsel piece, okay? Let's forget that.
Yeah.
I use their website 3 to 5 days a week to look information up. I use that town and city archive pretty regularly for information. I mean, in season, the legislative bulletin, you know, gives me the update that what's there, and, you know, town and city, when it comes out every month, that, you know, particularly over the past year or two, there's been a lot of really high-value articles that I use in there for day-to-day operation, understanding what we're doing, food for thought. Some of them we actually have available for specific customer questions that come in. So I use those regularly.
I know I enjoy that New Hampshire Municipal Magazine. I look forward to reading that, and they have some good ideas.
The only thing about, I will say, is that the historical collection of New Hampshire municipal magazines, in some cases, is out of date compared to the changes to the state laws that have been made, so you're still kind of, okay, you can refer to them, but
They're outdated, is that what you're saying?
If you go back 3-4 years and get some of these articles, yeah. I mean, state laws change, they change pretty regularly.
All right, any other discussion on the motion?
I'm not good for change unless, I would like to see some towns that are
I just have
involved
one
in
thing.
it, like Litchfield.
Jason, you keep
One
saying
second,
that,
Pat's still talking.
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry,
You all set, Pat?
yeah.
That's your-
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
You keep saying you're not sure what direction they're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any timeline that you have as far as, that you can give us, where you think that they'll have an answer for us, I guess, or you'll have an answer for us?
I would probably say next year at this time. Because part of it is, okay, they have a plan, I'm not sure how it's all gonna actually end up being executed, you know? You can write a plan, until you get into it, you see what happens. I mean, this change was forced upon them, and they restructured everything this summer. So they're only a couple months into this new structure. I mean, they still have an interim executive director. They've just transitioned to the new website. So I don't know yet. I mean, they have a plan, but what that plan actually looks like on the ground, they may change. So,
Have we got a time limit? That if we don't do it now, we have to pay $6,000 this year, but say we find out that it looks better than what we thought.
We renew again in 2015.
you renew next year.
You could do it then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, I think you should have this conversation next year and say, where is the if you don't,
How much have you
if you stay with them for a year, then you go back and say, one, where are we? What is the level of service? Because there's a possibility, I mean, and part of my concern is that, that the level of service will decrease because of the small organization, the unbundling and all of that. In which case, it's harder to argue for that. I mean, they've changed some of those pieces already. Are other people moving as well? The sort of the benchmark point of, okay, well, are we making a decision based on what Salem and Manchester have done? But now if we start seeing sort of some other people saying, hey, this is too steep for me, and if they get some pushback too, it may give them some food for thought.
Yeah, and if you say they're going up by 10%, or don't be surprised at 10%, we're not gonna pay $7,000 a year for their services.
I think it depends on what the menu of services are gonna be.
But
going
if we're
forward.
saving on our own lawyer,
But we're
Instead
not.
Well, I don't think we know that, right? So
that's what I mean, we don't know.
There are other resources beyond legal counsel that Jason uses that he would be without, and the town employees would be without too. So I don't think we really have a lot of information, but
No.
to make a decision, but,
Feel like-
I'm gonna call the question, so. All those in favor and not renewing the NHMA dues, say aye.
Aye.
Not renewing?
Not renewal, no. That's a negative way of putting it.
That's what the motion was,
I
to
know.
not renew it. So you're in favor of not paying the $6,000?
Yeah, I don't wanna pay it.
Okay. Opposed? Aye.
Okay.
Wait.
Before you wrap this vote up, I just wanna make sure Ms. Jewett knows.
I know, so Mrs. Jewett, by your vote, we'll no longer engage with NHMA, we'll not use their resources, we will not have, well, we'll have access to certain things, but we will not be using their services.
No, I want the other way.
You want to,
I would like to stay where we are now.
okay, so
For 1 year.
then the vote should, the vote,
Okay, so the motion is actually that we drop out of NHMA.
yeah.
Yeah,
And what John is asking you is to vote on that motion. If you want to drop out of NHMA, vote yes. If you don't want to, vote no.
Okay, so let me just make sure the clear account.
okay.
For those in favor of dropping out of the membership from NHMA, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, aye.
Aye.
Abstain. So it's 2-2-0,
2-2.
and I guess it's.
So that means we flip a coin and that's.
No,
No, it does not mean you flip a coin, it means motion fails.
motion fails. Not that I would assume if the other member was here, what his vote would be, but based on.
I can tell you.
All right. Moving on. Ambulance collections.
Ambulance collections.
So I know this was requested
Yeah.
the week before, last meeting where Mr. Byron wasn't here.
Maybe
so-
I can cut to the chase,
Mhm.
and what I'm looking to find out is, at some point in the past, we as a board had talked about the possibility of going to court.
Yep.
For collections court and small
Right.
claims, I don't know, pick a name for it. Excuse me. To collect from those who have not paid their bills for the use of ambulance, which the town got charged through our contract with Hudson. My real question is, where do we stand on that? Are we gonna do that, not do that? And if we're not gonna do that, how are we gonna try and go after or recapture the outstanding?
We started putting things together, and then, when we changed finance directors, we shelved that idea, because there's certain staff and paperwork time to it. We do our regular notices and repayment pieces. The conversation, looking at an exchange on the municipal manager's website, and I shared some of that, no one seems to have taken the matter into their own hands. They're all using third-party biller and collection service.
Is it cheaper to do that than go to court?
5% of the collected rate, right?
It's probably 5% of the collector rate. I would argue that, yes, it's probably cheaper because we need to throw staff time at chasing this. So I'm not sure whether it makes sense to be sending Karen and I off to do all of this paperwork, and
Well, it's filing in small claims, it's actually going to small
its potential
claims.
appearances and all the rest. So, I've asked, Brent is connecting me with the Comstar rep he's working with in Northwood to get a plan, to get a proposal from them, so I can actually flesh out what real numbers look like there, and we can match them up against commitment of staff resources. The staff resources, when we talked about this before, I'm not sure that, I could recommend putting Karen's time at it, so then you're potentially looking at my time, which probably doesn't seem to be a good use either. Or bringing somebody else on just to do that.
Frank Raoul Byron?
Yeah, well,
By degree in law from.
Yeah, exactly. So, given that I couldn't find anybody else who's taking this approach for sort of the, in the quick survey that's out there, I'm going to see if we can, what numbers we come back with, and I'll try to get you something.
Can I ask a technical question on this then?
Yeah.
The agencies that you would deal with, I'm not sure if it's done the same way, but do you sell the debt?
No, we wouldn't. There's a collection process through Comstar. I got to find out when we actually work with them, at what point their collection world actually ends, because we only see a fraction of it now. So that's part of the conversation that we need to have. And then you guys need to have a policy about at what point do you write it off.
Does Hudson use that process now for their own collection? Or do they just assume once it's in the bill, they don't get paid, our stuff doesn't go to their collectors?
Our stuff doesn't go to their collectors. Our stuff is short-circuited out per contract, so we don't
Okay.
play out to the end of their string.
And do we have any data from Hudson on their collection rate?
I don't.
I mean, they're
So,
local, right, and it's their services they're providing, I wonder what
Yeah.
they're getting back.
yeah, I've reached out to them to see if I could get some more
Okay.
background on it, but I'm thinking that the Comstar thing may be a better approach for us.
I would agree that when we first started talking about it, it sounded like it wouldn't be a big deal, but with the limited resources we already have, and the fact that having gone through small claims court myself recently, it's a real pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So, if you're trying to collect on 10 different individuals in small claims court, that could be a long couple of weeks of going through the process.
Yeah. So I'm trying to put this together and want to try to get you a proposal.
When would you get a proposal from us?
As I'm hoping I can have it for one of your November meetings.
So right now, we've got open invoices in 2013 of $7,000. What do we have from other prior years? You know? What's the total nut? To use a technical term.
Yeah.
The municipal association doesn't do anything with that. They don't have an agency through the
No,
municipal.
they go after you if you don't pay your dues.
I realize that, but they're gonna go after you first, because you're up there more often. And you ask more questions. I got you on that one.
I know you got
Yeah.
in here at 7,000 for a 13, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, let me, let me run some numbers here, because Karen has this all nicely color-coded in things. I have flags that say abatement needed, so I don't want to count those in. let me get you a better number for the next meeting. I'll give you a breakdown of what we have.
But
Because-
we
So
have,
if we can put this on the next
Sure.
agenda,
Yep.
just as a follow-up.
I would say, in the last 5 years in town, calls of ambulances. You go and you read the fire and the police reports and the ambulance here, ambulance here, ambulance here. I think if you have a stomachache, you take an ambulance, and I think, I can't believe it, boy.
I thought,
Well, we can't do anything about that, so.
Right.
I know, but if we really collect it from them, some of these people who don't have insurance, I think it'll kind of wake them up a little bit,
Well,
maybe.
I think the
We
unfortunate.
can't take it out of
So-
there.
Some of them don't have the ability to pay it, and I think and some of them disappear over time too. So, I mean, that's, some of these that are historic, those are some of the challenges we have of, some of these, they're missing. I mean, I can't, when letters, certifieds all come back there, I'm running out of options,
Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll review it again on the next
Yep.
meeting as far as the outstanding debt we have currently,
Yep.
and then sometime in November, you'll have a proposal.
Yeah, as soon as I get that, I'll put something up.
All right, moving to the next item, which is the potential warrant articles for the upcoming election, of the upcoming year, 2014. There's
Do you
quite a few
remember
there.
a while ago, we were talking about, people say, they look at the first 1, 2, or 3, and if they say, oh, no, that's no, well, and then if you have 15 more warrant articles, they say, no, 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 for them all. So I think we have to be careful to make sure we don't have as many, as, I realize that these were just prospects, but boy, ooh.
Well, there's actually there's a few that are not here.
What?
There's 14 that I can think of, I've been thinking about, the actions of the budget committee from the night before. Well, that's there, actually. number
There,
12, but-
most of those should be here.
No, I don't see the fire truck, not the fire truck, the pickup. We haven't talked
there
about-
was some wacky stuff here. Did you get my note from today?
Yeah, well, yeah, you added your note onto this, though, right? I checked, you put yours onto this
Yeah,
list,
but I
too.
didn't see it go through, and that's why I just finally said, screw it, I'll just send you an email.
Yeah, and no, I saw it on this one, too. Because I went to paste it across, and I saw it was already there as number 24. So,
Oh, okay. It did go through, never mind.
yep. Obviously, this is sort of a brainstorming list. Some of these are recycled from prior years, so they look like warrant articles now with all the language. Some of them are one-liners, some of them are a couple liners. Need to kind of start sifting through, not to get you to say, yeah, I want to take this article forward. I mean, it's October. But those that you want to flesh out in a little more detail, have a more detailed conversation, those that you kind of want to park and,
Number 2 and number 6 are duplicates. One says it's.
Yeah, I did, there was a duplication of these things.
yeah, sorry.
No, it's
We end up, well, good, see, you've made the list shorter already. That's what happens when you cut and paste.
24 to 23.
So, let me, how do you want to tackle this? Because I don't necessarily want to get into an extended conversation on 23 different warrant articles.
Right. Let's see. Does anybody see anything in this list that they didn't expect, or missing, or something that I do it?
Number 1.
Yeah, what is number 1?
Number 1 is one that I recycled from, I don't know, I think I bring it up each year and it dies each year. There is an optional authority that gives the selectmen the ability to buy or sell land properties, as long as they go through a process that requires public hearings, planning board, conservation. It's all sorts of various hoops to jump through to do this. You also can't go sell conservation land. This gives you a little bit of flexibility if something comes up, if you want to buy it, if you want to sell it. Because once the town owns something, you own it forever. one of the interesting applications that we found it for this year, that we found, oh, it would have been useful to have this actually this year, is in some cases where subdivisions have been built and created, easements of different types have been deeded to the town. If in subsequent building out, you find that you don't need that easement anymore, your choice right now is go back and ask town meeting to approve getting rid of it because you own the land. You know, that we had an incident come up this year and said, boy, if we had this other process, we could run it through that process.
Does anybody have an opinion on one?
I don't have a problem with it, it's just, I'm not seeing any, I mean, all the land that the town has right now is basically land that nobody else has wanted.
Right.
You know, it's, as we'd say in the trade, bottom land.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that there's much that the town would sell or get rid of in terms of property. It just.
There's not a heck of a lot, probably.
And as far as buying, you know.
We don't have funds to buy it anyway.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
That's a discussion for another warrant article that's further down.
Right.
So I just don't see it. I mean, unless I don't have a problem against it, I just don't see it.
It is, it's more, and I think you're right. I mean, there's not a primary need for it. It is a useful tool for an occasional circumstance that comes up. It's gonna be fairly limited, because obviously it's gonna be real hard to buy land without an appropriation to buy land.
Right.
There's not a lot you wanna sell, if any. You know, if you've taken it by tax deed, you're allowed to sell that under separate authorization anyway. So, an occasional, you know, if the opportunity comes up, you have a tool to use.
I'd mark it as a
Option.
option,
Yeah.
just to hold.
Yep.
I just don't right now.
That's fine.
And if we're gonna if we're gonna go buy it, we're gonna have to appropriate the damn money anyway, so. You mean, so you're going back to the voters, you may as well go back to the voters.
might as well go
for
ask them for it,
the
yep.
land, the reason, and everything else.
You just sell the whole package versus.
Right.
putting it otherwise.
But we wouldn't have to put the money up. Well, I'm thinking of a case many years ago, none of you were on the board at the time, and you weren't here, Jason, that
You
there
mean the
was
good old
somebody,
days.
there was somebody who had less than an acre of land, and they had a brook running through it and all, and that person went ahead and got it for very, very low price. And then what happened, the person who lived next to that would have loved to have that land, but the town had already offered it to this person. And I don't think that's fair. I just think whoever we can get the most money from. I mean, if it's less than an acre and it's got a brook running through it, it can't be built on anyway. It's gonna be wetland, and it certainly doesn't even come up to the acre minimum. So I just believe that I would want to make sure that the town got first choice. And then if we could sell it to that person who lived next door for 15,000, fine. That person might want a brook on that land next to them and use it for a picnic area and all, great. Well, that's what happened in this case, so. Whereas the fellow got it for practically nothing, the person who bought it. But
Okay.
I just would like to see it having the
I got a
town.
few
for-
questions, if I
we
may.
might as well get the most money we can for it.
Regarding this one or something else?
Something else.
Go ahead.
8 and 16, they're virtually the same, right?
8 and 16. No, 8 is, 8
Yep.
is capital projects and 16 is health agencies?
What?
Or you look,
Yeah, 8 is capital projects, and 16 is health agencies.
16, no, that's 17. I got 16 for Peyton Mill Town Hall. 8 right here, same thing.
did you refresh it for some reason?
Oh, yeah, I got rid of the double, sorry.
Alright,
I got rid of the double,
That was
alright, I didn't refresh.
Yeah.
My bad.
Right.
And then also, number 9, right? What, is it, wasn't he, was it 9, where is it? With the air packs, where'd those go?
9 is elderly exemptions.
No, not.
okay,
Eight,
the
eight,
capital
okay.
projects, yeah.
Capital projects, those air packs, wasn't he trying to grant those?
Yeah, he was. He
I
was.
think he's noting it.
I use that as an example.
Capital projects in general, he's trying to capture a way to take some funds and put it aside, multi-years to fund some of these things versus keep on going to the tax base every year.
Yeah, I don't think you may not have an application for it this year, but I did sort of want to flag that. It was one of the things that, I dropped it on the list from leafing through Town and City and their last issue. They noted that you are now can do a capital appropriation for multi-year.
Okay.
So I used the air packs if we had to buy them. So, yeah.
See,
Understood.
Kevin, I told you, the $7,000 that we're paying for dues is now expanding out beyond.
It's not expanding out. I think it's a good idea to have a fund set aside for capital. We keep on
Yeah.
hitting up against capital issues without any funding.
Yeah.
So at least give us a way to deal with it.
It is. I mean, the thing is, if I remember correctly, that's set up for specific items. So if you're not raising a specific, this isn't a blanket authorization.
Yeah. You have to lay out what it is.
Right. So that's in this current year, that's probably more food for thought than a real article.
If you're talking about this and only related to air packs, if it's only related to air packs, I would construct a long-term purchase with a vendor and say,
Yeah.
we're gonna purchase so many per year for the next 3 years, and
Right.
just get it that way.
Mhm. So,
Anything else, Kevin?
No, I'm
Can
good.
I go back to number 8? The town, I remember when Mr. Callaway came in, he said that they had 3,000 that they could put in for the painting. So if you're asking for 20, why are we asking for 20 if they have 3,000 that they said they had?
yeah. Right now, I have that just as a placeholder item, because when we talked about it weeks ago, we talked about potentially as an article, we talked about revisiting the overall painting number. We talked about maybe incorporating a part of it in the budget if we end up at something less than 20. We're still working on getting better numbers and strategies on that. There was actually, Steve Cowell had pointed out that they may actually have some shutters
Yeah, I
to
heard that.
use, that's our biggest hang-up on the lead and the high cost, are the shutters. If we're able to replace with new appropriate style shutters that come from there, we could probably bring that cost way down. So this isn't ready to go yet. I left this as a placeholder because I didn't want to lose the idea, but we're still working on what it is, hopefully a lot less than the 20 we asked for before.
I know he said they had 3,000 at least, and
Yeah.
maybe 4, I think it was nearer 3, that they could put toward it. And I think if they have
Oh.
it, they should.
Oh, look, I do have that one on here
Because
twice,
that
too.
hall is not
Yeah, you do.
used by much other than the historical.
But it's still a town entity.
Yep.
It's still a town building.
Yeah, it is.
And I would assume, can we do this, can we take the, well, we have to decide how to fund it, but wouldn't this be easy enough to come out of general fund?
If we're able,
According to our auditors, we have, a little bit more money than we probably should have there. Just saying.
A lot more money than we need.
What did you say?
Take the money out of the general fund versus going back and raising the money again. If our general fund has enough cushion in it, we should probably consider using some of those dollars.
Oh, I don't know. I want to make sure we have enough.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, some of these that have dollars on them, you may decide to use fund balance for them. So,
I want to see the money.
you
turned back in.
watch my hair turn white.
White turf.
Whiter, yes. So to think, I was blonde when I started this job.
When do we have to have all the warrants kind of dotted and crossed, the T's crossed, I's dotted to the budget committee? What's the date that we're giving it to them? It's the last meeting in,
Did we say November? We pushed that further out, didn't we?
it's November 7th is what I thought it was. I'll have to go look. Let me look. We need to put some,
I mean,
Can I suggest we just go down the list of these things and say hold,
Yeah.
go forward, or drop, or whatever?
yeah, that would be great.
so we already decided
As
one's
long as you
dropped,
remember to
right?
say drop.
Ones we're just gonna hold. I
Yep.
mean,
Oh, yeah,
my
hold
thinking
for
was that if maintaining recycling, why do we wanna do that?
New authority this year to use a revolving fund for it. We could possibly move recycling revenues related costs to a revolving fund. My note here is, we spend about $365,000 in the budget. We bring in about $65,000. So in theory, we could move some direct disposal costs there and some portion of facility overhead. If you have a year where you bring in extra funds or you generate extra revenue in the market, that balance could be applied to future capital purchases. Right now, your balance goes to the fund balance, you use it to offset taxes for everybody.
But we already constructed a warrant article to set aside money that if something
Yep.
happens, such as the skid steer blows up or a baler decides to
For
head
the-
southwest,
For
east.
capital, but he's talking about using it for dealing with expenses.
Oh, he's talking
Well,
about,
I generally would target it toward capital.
Future
You could use it
capital
for whatever you wanted to, but, you know, I'd suggest it for capital. I think it's a bit of a reach with the numbers you have right now in the facility. I put it on the list because maintaining recycling was added as a revolving fund law, through law this year.
So, which fund do we have that covers the recycling facility?
It all goes to the general fund, so,
I'm talking about, we have a fund set aside.
oh, we have a trust fund that,
for all major systems, right?
yeah, well, no, we have a special one for, that is solid waste and highway department. So if we overshoot or for snow or a baler breaks, we have 20 grand set
Hot solid waste
aside.
is included in the highway one, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
we combined them together because we thought that,
yep.
yeah.
so I personally just don't see the need for this. I mean, other than that, all that you're doing is running money out of the revenues of the highway, the revenues of the recycling center
Right.
into a separate fund just to pay for operating expenses. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, well, the revenue's offset anyway, right,
Yep.
so, yeah, I agree, I'd say
I
we should
agree
make
as
it.
well.
2-year budget,
I'll talk to that. We had discussions on that. We left it open.
yeah,
My understanding was the school was gonna go ahead and do it, and if the school's gonna go ahead and do it, then I would suggest that the school go ahead and do it, and we come forward, depending on how the board feels next year with that, if that's the way we wanna go.
so the school is gonna go forward to the voters and ask for permission to go 2-year budgeting?
I thought that's what they were gonna do. I haven't talked to
I
the
haven't
school in
heard.
ages.
Yeah, I haven't
I
heard.
doubt if they do. I hear they're coming in with a possible warrant article to put in a big amount of money for renovating, since they don't intend to build a new school at all.
Well, the 2-year budgeting doesn't change that, it just changes their model, but,
I mean, if they're putting a warrant article, it's a separate issue.
yeah,
But I just don't think we as a board need to go forward with it this year.
okay.
That's my
I'm in
recommendation.
agreement.
I
with
think
that.
it'd be better to wait and to see how the economy improves. I think it's pretty hard to decide what you're gonna use 2 years down the road.
Okay, well, we're gonna put it aside, so. Remove it, strike it from the list. For next, consideration for next year, so move it to that pile we're gonna start for next year.
Yep, that's
Number
how I start
4.
this list.
Number 4, health and dental insurance expendable trust fund, but also post-trade.
Why would we want to take money that the $17 million supposedly, or not 17 million, I'm sorry, that's a different issue. But the money coming back, right? I mean, isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, you know, because what we got back this year was we got back, you know, this extra check, right? And, you know, do we want to, which represents what we have paid in the past toward health insurance, that we get our share, you know, 2 years later back. You know, and the question is, do we want to roll that part that we're not returning back into the general fund, or do we want to segregate that health-related money, put it into a separate fund, and use it in future years to offset health insurance increases, expecting that our prices are going to be more volatile in the future?
But what are you gonna do about, what are you gonna do once that money is expended?
Well, it
Drive the
get,
fund, you're gonna drive the trust fund to zero?
yeah. Yes, because what's going to happen is, I mean, let's just take an example of, you get $40,000 back this year. You got to pay $20,000 back to your retirees and employees, and you keep 20, which represents the town share paid 2 years ago. You set that aside, and in the next year, when you get your rate increase that says your rate increase is 10% this year, you take your first 20,000 of the $200,000 increase and take it from the trust fund. there's a certain amount of maneuvering that's probably excessive as opposed to just dropping it to the general fund and
I'm
the
thinking,
fund balance.
You know, and I'm sure that insurance rates are gonna stabilize under Obamacare and Affordable Care Act.
Oh,
And I kind of just don't see the need for this one. No, I'm serious.
I mean,
I'm
I'm-
not seeing it.
Because then it goes to the general fund anyway, it's gonna offset in the future.
It is. I mean, I am concerned, and, my concern comes from, I expect we're going to be facing, leaving out the national political scene, the local pricing scheme, we are going to see a lot more volatility in our health insurance prices. Because we have fewer participating pools, and, our pool that we participate in, is not being allowed to retain reserves, which means that they'll return more of us in a given year and then ask for more coming back the following year. It's a thought. It's probably more unwieldy than we want to get into.
So how long would you expect this fund would last until we zero it out?
I would say that you could potentially wipe it to zero each year. Okay, for instance, in 2014, well, hold on. Let me walk you through the logic. In 2014, you are going to get a refund of what you paid in 2012. Okay? You set that aside, and you could apply that to your first bill of 2015. Now, let's say there's a miracle, and, your price increase in 2015 is 1%. You may let that build up, and then in 2016, when your premium goes up 20%, you have a larger cushion.
I guess my thinking is the board always has the option on a year-to-year basis of applying general fund monies to decrease the budget. And if that's what we want to do as a board, or the future boards want to do it that way, rather than be handcuffed to having to only apply it to healthcare needs, I guess.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. Everybody may disagree, but
No,
that's,
I am
agree.
agree with you too. There may be other priorities and other things we gotta worry about. All right, sounds like it's a strike. Number 5, if we're following along. Extended liquor license hours until 2 a.m. Who brought that forward?
me.
Another law change this year.
You know, at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's
You just
awful
wanna be-
depressing, you gotta go home.
I was gonna worry about you to tell me you're saying.
Let me explain to you what's going on.
Yeah.
This past session, the House of Representatives and Senate passed a bill that allows municipalities, and it's only by the vote of the citizens of the municipalities, to allow liquor to be served in those towns until 2 a.m. Right now, stores or facilities that serve liquor have to close at 1 a.m. And they have no option of staying open. This allows them to extend it to 2 a.m. I looked at it as simply a matter of let the people decide what they want to do. If they want to have it open until 2 a.m., fine with me. I don't care. I'm in bed by,
Yeah, I mean, I
You
don't
know,
personally have
10:30.
a problem with that.
no, actually, I'm in bed about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning anyways, but I'm at home.
I'm in bed by 9.
But somebody else in my family might not be home, and they might get clipped by one of these drunk drivers.
There was a lot of discussion about that and everything else, and,
Do we have wonder what our
We
chief,
have enough
our
problems.
police chief
on
would
the
say
roads
about this?
already.
I mean, how many establishments we have in town? We got one I can think of.
you have a couple, I think,
Two?
if you think of Woodsman's, you've got,
Woodsman's and Romano's the only two that I know
Romano's.
that serve liquor.
Yeah. I'm not sure how often or how many of them are
Convenience
open.
stores?
no, there's none on 102, is there?
I think Romano's is open, can potentially be open late.
I think
But
yeah.
Woodman's closed down at the summertime they're open a little later.
Yeah, but
They'll be
there's the,
closed pretty soon anyway.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're back to,
Yeah, so this would only basically,
this
It would
is
be-
somewhat theoretical. This is we go through the list of all of the laws that changed this year, say, hey, is there anything that we want to ask? And this is one of the things that's on there.
It's fair to ask the people if they want it, it's fine. I'm just curious also if the chief of police has a position on it, whether or not he sees a problem with the 1 a.m. closure today.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any drunken rowdy people in town, but that happen at a liquor place, at a restaurant. Homes are another issue, but,
Yeah.
We don't get any more money if these people are arrested in Litchfield, you realize that.
no.
I just think it's a waste. I think we have enough fatalities in our country, in our state, in our town and all, without,
I have no problem with going forward to people and ask people, and I would like to hear from the police chief.
Yeah,
Whether he
I'll
has a
ask.
position at all. I mean, if he came up and said, look, we got a real problem, we shouldn't do that, then I think we should rethink it, but if he has no objection to
You
it.
know, I will also say that this does not mean that any establishments
Yeah,
have to
Mac-
stay open to two AM.
We can have the
giving
owners,
them
we
that
don't have to,
option.
we don't have to,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
If they get clientele, it's there at 2 o'clock in the morning, lucky them, I
You know,
guess.
if they got guys like Norm,
No, I can see it like, some late football, whatever, I mean, I can see something that would potentially be open late, but again,
Yeah.
I think it's fair to ask the people, and I only ask whether or not the chief has.
Okay.
has a comment
ALDS
on it.
games that start at 9 PM.
Yeah. Like I said, as long as, if the chief has an opinion, I'd like to hear it, otherwise let the people make a decision.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to stormwater permit compliance, non-lapsing fund, I guess. So, this is legal, we can do that? We can create a little fund to deal with the stormwater increasing cost?
Well, I mean, we need to have a way to deal with it.
No, I know we do.
We need to have a way to deal with it. You can do expenditure funds that are non-lapsing.
So I just have a stupid question.
Mm-hmm.
What will this cover? What types of expenses will this cover?
This will cover, once the permit is issued by EPA, we have to file, a notice of intent, which is sort of the first.
Intent to cut.
Yeah, if only it were as easy as the intent to cut. So you basically have to summarize what your plan's gonna be. And that's, I think, that ends up being within 90 days or something after the permit is issued by EPA. And then you have to start your tracking plan, and the permit, as it's been written, is pretty front-loaded.
Permit or for the tracking plan?
This is for the engineering and technical services to comply with filing that NOI and getting started on whatever we have to do the
So,
first year.
Here's my concern. This is not optional. EPA will force us to do this whether a warrant article passes or not.
But
Mhm.
does it change the, if it doesn't get approved for funding, we can still fund it, it's just not gonna be a non-lapsing
Well, then you're in
fund.
violation of state law under no means no.
Yeah.
Isn't this fund just putting money in a non-lapsing fund, doesn't actually mean, we can still have an appropriation for it? I would assume we have to have an appropriation for the fund anyway,
I don't
right?
know.
Depending on how you structure what you're asking for in the article, here's the problem I'm up against, is that when they finally issue a permit, which potentially could be next year based on the best information we have, but as we know from years gone past, this has been a moving target for several years, a clock starts ticking pretty quickly in terms of paperwork we have to file, paperwork that we do not have the technical capability to do in-house, and is not built into what we have existing in the highway department sort of on-hand engineering line. And then we know that the compliance cost of doing the field work, the tracking, and everything else that's going to be required in those first years of the permits is significantly more than it is now. I mean, I think I shared some of those estimates with you earlier. So I'm trying to find a way to give us the ability to have the money to get started on this, facing an unknown cost, an unknown permit time, but a potential likelihood of this hitting in calendar year 2014.
I guess my recommendation would be, this is not going to be negotiable with EPA. EPA is not going to take no for an answer, and I guess what I'm thinking is that you should go into the budget.
At what level? I mean, part of my reason.
Earmark it in particular for what it's intended for, which is the stormwater permit.
and if it isn't spent, it'd be turned back into the,
Well, I mean, we would encumber it, we'd have to encumber it for a future year. I mean, the issue that I have is I can't say with definite certainty that it will hit in 2014, which is part of the reason I'm saying, well, there's a likelihood it will, set up the non-lapsing fund. The challenge is, if this doesn't pass, then I gotta somehow find a way to legally comply.
Well, you gotta comply with two masters, each of which is telling you different things, one of which is the state law saying no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is the federal law saying we.
Yeah.
And therein lies the dilemma. And, you know, but I'm also looking at,
You know, my suggestion would be you put it in the budget, and you put, obviously you can't put this in the default budget, and if we go forward with the default budget and end up in a situation, we gotta pay for it, we're gonna have to cut to answer the we, all the way home. Pretty good, huh?
Boy.
I can see that smile.
I mean, I tend to agree with Frank. I think we get stuck in between a rock and a hard place. If it doesn't pass, and we then forced to do it, we're going against the no means no, potentially. Unless there's some way we can craft the warrant that kind of gives us the ability to still meet the requirement by the federal government and other means.
Yeah, but if you do it that way, John, here's what ends up happening. So let's say that you craft it that way and the warrant still fails, then you still gotta come up with the money.
No, I agree. It's
Right,
the
so
end
if
result's the same, but if
Either
you
way, you
pass
need to come up with the
but if
money.
the- right,
You're
right.
stuck one way or the
Yeah,
other.
but the thing is, this appropriation could come out of a fund balance if we structure it based on the first, the deposit is out of fund balance. I know you're criminal because I keep on saying I'm taking out of fund balance, but, you know, I think some of these projects should get taken out of fund balance.
Or the other option is you just go to court, let EPA take you to court, and then you can pay it out of
Yeah,
fund
but then it'll
balance.
cost a whole lot more than $70,000.
well,
No,
you,
just
you
don't
could,
show up.
well, or you could just take, the EPA and the Attorney General and turn them loose of one another and say, we, the poor town, are simply trying to figure out what law we're supposed to follow.
Either way, it's gonna cost us a whole lot more to deal with it if we try to go against the grain, unfortunately, I think, too, so. I don't know, like I said, unless we can structure the warrant to give us the ability to do, really, the warrant's just defining how we're gonna fund for it. We have to fund it somehow, but if we set the warrant, it says come out of fund balance, that's a way to not impact the tax base, it puts it aside and we have it. And if it fails, it still comes out of the bottom line anyway. It'll come out of the bottom line of the appropriation, but, and it will impact something, but.
I guess as a compromise, I would suggest, Jason's just looking to be able to work on something.
I don't think
Because
that's
he has
the
nothing to do, he said, told me earlier in the week.
Yeah, I have nothing to do. No, I did,
So,
If you
no,
have to go, I'll call you tomorrow.
I'm getting to a valid point here, and my suggestion would be to say to Jason to go ahead and try and draft something up. And then continue to work on whether we wanna go budget or whether we wanna go,
That's
so that the
fair.
board at some
That's fair.
point can make a decision.
That's fair. So let's take the task. We'll leave it here for now. Let's see if we can craft a warrant that makes sense.
Wouldn't we hear
We'll go from there.
before the end of the year anyway?
no, there's no guarantee.
No.
No, there's no guarantee.
EPA's put this off for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and,
They
and,
started putting it off when I did it the
Yeah.
first time, so I've been
and
here
then
almost 4
this
years.
one was gonna be issued and review the comments, get it out the end of the year or early next year. I mean, my concern is that the first clock starts ticking within 90 days. They have heard from enough people that unless they ignore all of the comment, the year one requirements may be able to be pushed out a little bit.
Yeah.
So we may be able to craft something that splits the difference here, but,
Okay.
my other problem is I'm having a hard time figuring out what number to ask for and how to defend it in the 2014 budget.
We
Well-
find out by the deliberative session, which is in January.
Unlikely.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely. I think the number probably is, the range you have is probably valid based on what I read too.
Yeah.
And let's go off and craft something that's a little bit more meatier. See if it can help compel us to do something one way or the
Yep.
other. All right, moving on to number 7. See if the town will raise the appropriate fund sum of $20,000 to pay basically the old town hall.
Yeah.
I'd say we go ahead with that.
Yeah.
And
so
whatever
we
the
don't-
number is, the number is.
Yeah.
Now, I would also not necessarily put in there, a donation from the Historical Society.
That's on.
Because if all of a sudden the Historical Society says, I'm sorry, we're out of this, we're not giving you the money,
Then you unravel the whole thing.
you're unraveling the
Yeah.
whole thing. So I'd put the whole thing in there, and you may want to state in there that if you get a donation, then it'll be applied to it.
Right. Okay.
Leave it at that.
Okay,
They
Yep.
said they had the money, so
Well,
I would
I-
say,
we go.
you
we
did
go.
tell us.
Number 8, capital projects.
That's just an FYI at this point. I don't think I have an application for it, so.
Revisit elderly exemptions. What do we have to revisit it for? Who is that?
Talking about raising it
Me,
up.
again.
Last year, we talked about it, but we didn't do anything
It,
about
it,
it.
it's a matter of, elderly exemptions, compared to the, valuation of their property and stuff like that. So now that the valuation of the property has significantly changed from what it's been in the past, the question really is, should we look at the elderly exemption in light of the new valuations and adjust accordingly?
And what would that, that mean exemption will go down or go up? Guess I'm not sure what it would do.
They better go down. The value has gone way down.
Well, we exempted elderly, and I don't have the elderly thing in front of me, but we exempted elderly whose house values, we dropped house values down what?
We have,
We give a deduction to the valuation of their home.
yeah,
Is really what it is. And now that the whole structure of housing has changed, it may be time to look at that.
yeah, I mean, we do, 50,000 for, if you're between 65 and 74, 75 to 79, 80,000, 80 plus 125,000.
But they have to have certain income.
Yeah, now, I have not updated this data. When we looked at this last year, and I pulled this out again, we had data from 2010, so I will admit that it's getting a little aged at this point.
Scale is the correct word.
You know, well, but these tend not to change real quickly across town, so my guess is the data's gonna be pretty similar.
If you drive a Prius.
You know, we took the towns of our size and compiled sort of what those rates were, and we pulled out the medians. We were right at the medians for towns of our size, for those exemptions.
That's with 10 data, right?
That's with 10 data. Now, where we were outliers is there's also income limits for this. Our single income limit was 30,000, which was what the median was at that point. Our married income was 45,000, the median was 43.5. The place where we deviate significantly is the assets.
Right.
We have a very high asset limit. We allow up to $300,000 in individual assets and $300,000 in married
Now,
assets.
does that include the house? I
No,
believe it does.
no, it doesn't, but I believe when this was created, because this came in as a petition, I think
Right.
that when it was crafted, the belief was it did include the house, because the medians for these are $80,000. We are the biggest outlier of the towns of our size at that $300,000 asset limit. That's where we don't match our neighbors, or peers. Our asset limit is way higher than that is, which means it has the effect of making more people eligible for this exemption because of that really high asset limit.
Right.
So the upshot is if you were to change this to match what our peers use for limits, you would have the likely effect of having some elderly, people who currently hold an elderly exemption, lose that exemption.
If you lower it.
Right, if you lower the asset limit to something closer to median.
What was the median, you said?
80,
The median of.
wow.
and we're at 300.
And we're at 300,000.
It is big. Huh?
And I'm pretty sure that, I mean, it just comes from, if you went into it thinking that asset limit included your primary house, you'd say 300. But the way the law is written, it excludes your primary house.
I'm not sure what the law said at the time. I do know, as
Yeah.
you said, it was a petition warrant article.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, DRA found the petition warrant article to be invalid.
Mm-hmm,
And we had to revise it under a subsequent year to make it correct, technically correct with DRA.
yeah, I mean, as near as I can tell, this 300, as far as, I mean, looking at what everyone else does, I think was a good faith error that somebody put in, thinking that it needed to include more than it did. Because, you know, the more common rates are 75, 90, you know, the next highest is 200,000 in Bow.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So we're gonna you're gonna word that up and figure out what the right number is?
if you're interested in it, and that, you know, I mean, we can try to go update this data, you know,
Yeah, let's update the data then. Okay. Update the data,
okay.
so we'll make a decision. All right, 10, budget cap per 32.5B, fixed to allow the use of fund balance without penalty.
This was a budget article, a warrant article that we talked about last year. The board decided not to go along with
Right.
it. Part of the reason was there was an issue with the state law, the way it was generated, so that what would happen is if you received, if you used fund balance, basically, you ended up viewing that as, not being calculated in your ability to include that in the cap. So you ended up actually, by using fund balance, getting hurt as a municipality, and it made problems. So that was corrected this year and allowed to, and was fixed. I did originally copy and paste that, I don't know where it went to, but
32.5B, all right.
Yep.
So we wanna pursue that again?
the budget cap allows the town to set a max increase in the budgets of the town going forward at a certain percentage rate. And personally, I would recommend that the town do it.
What are the advantages and disadvantages?
The advantages are that the budget cap, as it is written today, would allow the town's citizens to be assured that their tax rates or the amount of their town's budget does not go up more than whatever percent is set.
Yeah.
The other option is, citizens also have the right and the ability during the deliberative session, or, well, in our case, deliberative session, because we're SB two, to override the budget cap if that's what they so desire. So the fact that you establish, say, a 2% budget cap does not necessarily mean, and you can establish any percent you want. I just picked 2% for discussion's point. But you, excuse me, the citizens, if they wanted to, if something were abnormal were happening and we needed to go with the 3%, 5%, or whatever the case may be, the citizens, if you can convince them at the deliberative session, can override that and say, yeah, we agree with you, or no, we disagree with you, and you stay at the 2%.
By just a majority vote at the
Mhm.
deliberative?
5%?
I'm making numbers up. I mean, you
Yeah,
can use any numbers you want.
So that if we, I guess the question, I guess the way that would work then is if we had a major issue coming up and our cap would stop us from being able to resolve the problem, the deliberative session can override it and we can then put it in the budget and move forward.
Now, the other thing you
That's
need
the
to
way
be
it
aware of is warrant articles do not participate in the budget cap.
Right. I remember that from last year.
Oh.
Okay.
So this is only for the budget, it's not for,
Now, does
and
this,
this is only for the budget that the budget committee, the true budget, which is the budget committee's
which
budget.
includes both the school and the town?
No.
Or just the
It
town?
would only
does?
be the town.
So, here's my thing, if the school board does not adopt the same policy, then we're not controlling anything, because the town's budget it's a small factor in the overall budget to the community. And we're doing our darnest to try to keep costs in control, and not to say the school isn't either, but the cost is different, there's a big
Very
variation there.
You know, and if the board of selectmen, or actually it wouldn't be the board, but if some citizens wanted to put in petition for the school, that's up to the citizens, or the school board wants to put it, and that's up to the school board.
Well-
I'm only discussing it from a perspective of
From
a
the
board
town.
of selectmen, town-side government.
I think having the ability, what I would define as an escape clause by the people at deliberative makes sense, because I think at that point, then the people can make some decisions, but without having that, that would always scare me, because look at our costs now, I mean, some of our costs are going up based out of our control, and if we,
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's sort of that's the challenge you find yourself in is, you know, at what point do you position yourself to have to absorb those costs? You know, I mean, if you look at what we've proposed next year, for instance, we have like $70,000 of the increase is related to the hydrant costs and basically the pass-through costs we're seeing in New Hampshire retirement. So, you know, as you test those against a cap and everything else, in a cap scenario, you end up, you are obligated to propose a budget that absorbs those impacts, so you're making cuts other places. The deliberative session has the ability to restore that when they understand what the implications are. It also just means, as an appointed official, I'll say this, it just means that is, you're kicking, the various elected officials are kicking the can further down the road. You are elected to propose a budget, and then the budget committee is elected to review that and propose a budget. And so this basically removes a certain amount of that authority from both elected bodies.
No, but I
Well,
get what you're saying, is because if we.
To set the budget that you feel is appropriate.
Right, and it, right. I.
That's the
I
authority
think
it
I know, I
removes.
think I know where you're going with it, but I don't know if it really does that, but I can see why it would be portrayed that way.
Yeah.
All right, so let's construct a warrant that makes sense for it, and.
I think the wording of the warrant is stipulated by state law.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was
this
that.
one is not rocket science.
Yeah, let's get the wording down, let's see if, let's make sure we understand it before we actually proceed with it, but let's see what the warrant looks like, and obviously I'm gonna reread the RSA myself,
Mhm.
too. All right. 11, cap the conservation land acquisition fund at $1 million.
So, before we go off down the path of saying to cap the conservation fund, this was a warrant article proposal. It's not to cap, it is not to cap the conservation land acquisition fund at $1 million. Let me explain. In this article
That's what it
also,
says.
I know, but
I'm only, just so people know, I read what it said, I didn't inquire anything, but go ahead. No, proceed, I'm assuming you brought it forward, so.
yes, so if you look at Article 11, and I think there's others that are tying into this, or there should be somewhere along in here.
Jason, 13's a duplicate.
Yeah, that one's cheaper.
Yeah.
I like 13. Let's get rid of it.
The number doesn't matter, the intent's still the same. And so is in 15, it's duplicate.
In Article 20, if you want to look at that.
I'm just trying to get him cleaned up what he's doing. Go
I
ahead.
don't know if he changed when he deleted one or not.
Now I've created Untold and Havoc.
Is that the one pavement?
It's out, it's
improvement?
now Article at 19, where it just automatically snapped to 19.
It just magically became 19.
Okay,
Yep.
so here's the situation. Several years ago, the Board of Selectmen requested from the voters their opinion as to whether we should stop monies going into the land acquisition fund, which is collected from the town through land use change tax.
Mhm.
And out of that warrant article came the desire of the citizens to continue the land use change tax, going to the Conservation Commission. They changed the percentages to 80-20, if I remember correctly,
Mhm.
Jason. 80% goes to the the Conservation Commission, 20% goes to the town. And if you remember a moment ago, earlier this evening, when you asked if there were other business, and I said, let's discuss the Conservation Commission budget.
Yes,
So I'll kind of roll all these in together here.
okay.
So according to the latest information I have from our accounting department, we have about $956,845.93
Sounds about right.
as at the end of August, sitting in the Conservation Land Fund. Money go, this is like the Roach Motel, money rolls in, it never goes out, so we're not buying property. My thinking is to put a number on the maximum growth of that fund, and to allow any excess money to roll over into another fund that would be held pending release by the citizens of the town for the purchase of property. So, in effect, it doesn't totally cap the conservation fund, but it makes sure that this fund doesn't continue to grow until the point of absurdity, because this thing will, I believe, in the next year and a half easily, will get over $1 million of money sitting there. And I'm not getting the sense that the Conservation Commission is purchasing properties, purchasing easement rights, purchasing development rights, anything like that at all. And I think that what we should do is say, look, you've got $1 million. If you want to spend that $1 million, fine. But if you need more money, then go ask the citizens to use the money that's now in this fund that's set to the side. The other point in this, which I'll make you aware of, is that RSA 36A:5 says that if you set up a conservation land use fund, Jason's quickly going to see what it says.
No, I'm pulling up another thing I have.
If you want to use it, they can use it for anything they want. Okay, for the purposes of the RSA, which means that the Conservation Commission can use that fund for anything that they want to do, which includes funding themselves, in my opinion, which is the reason I wanted to discuss about the Conservation Commission budget, as well as the $7,000 that they wanted to use for the de-weeding of Darrah Pond. My recommendation would be let them fund themselves as well as their de-weeding efforts out of,
The overflow?
no, out of the fund, the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there's
$956,000.
another warrant, recommendation down below, so,
Yeah.
for that, but yeah, I agree.
So what I'm talking about doing is basically saying, fine, that conservation fund should only grow to a certain number. The residual goes over into a holding fund, and then if the Conservation Commission says, hey, we need more money that's in our fund to purchase land, they can go to the voters,
And ask
get the
for it.
voters' approval to requisition that money back in, and then go forward from there.
So the $1 million, the existing fund today, the Conservation Commission, by approval of the board, can go buy something.
Well, if
No.
you read the RSA, it
No,
actually doesn't.
no, it does not involve the board or the budget committee. It's
They
a
all- but they hold-
conservation.
But they hold a public hearing.
When they buy land, there's public
I always
hearing,
thought
there's
they- I
hoops
thought
to
they
jump
was-
through,
I thought
yes.
I thought they came in front of the board and gave us our intent. I guess we didn't have any authority to say yea or nay, but, all right. But the second fund would be total control of the voters. They would seek for approval from the voters to use it.
The Conservation Commission, it
Mhm.
would be earmarked money. It would address Jason's point, which he'll bring up in a moment, which is if we receive a whole, large hit of money coming in, that's gonna throw the tax rates all over the place. Okay, because it's unexpected revenue that's significantly gonna create problems with our.
That would go into that other fund.
That would roll into that other fund, and therefore, if in my way of thinking about it, if the Conservation Commission wants it, let them make the case to the voters to go over there and bring that money to their use.
Now, I think that, if I remember right, there was a discussion about something similar to this within the Conservation Commission. They talked about it, about being able to react to a purchase need. And then having to wait for a town meeting cycle was their, I think was their hang up. Now, they always can call a special meeting and I guess they can do all that, but
Okay. This fund, the way it's set up now, allows them to do that. That's why this fund is set up that way.
they can buy anything they want with right now.
They can buy,
Yeah, and
there's.
that's why I think they were so hesitant about having anything changed to it.
Right,
At least as
you
far
know,
as-
and there's, so there are some, I mean, when it comes to land purchase, there are some hurdles they need to jump through. You know, the piece, I think that, if you start changing it, the piece that Frank mentioned, I think is really important. There is a provision for sort of holding the land use change tax funds in sort of a holding pattern. So you don't get those tax rate swings if you get a windfall year. And the way that that's set up, it ends up being the release of the funds in that bucket is a vote of town meeting. So, you know, what this is basically saying is once you go over $1 million, those funds all go sit in this land use change tax bucket. Town meeting then has the authority, they can spend them, they can drop them to, add into the conservation fund, they can replenish if money's been spent, they can also use it to lower taxes. Because that's basically what you're doing, is you're holding it so it doesn't immediately wipe to the general fund, but, town meeting has the authority to drop those to the general fund. The current fund, as it's set up, is vague. As Frank mentioned, RSA 36A does allow a wide range of uses for maintenance and care and all of the rest for their funds, in addition to acquisition.
Particular wording is it can be used for any purpose
Within conservation. Right?
of the RSA.
Yeah.
And the RSA is the RSA that sets up the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I would say the Conservation Commission today theoretically could go out and blow $900 and some odd thousand on whatever they want. I don't think that they would do that, of course.
Right.
But
No, they've earmarked that for purchasing.
So here's the situation. Is, you know, as I started looking at this, I went back and pulled from the creation in 1968 and looked at the articles that created the fund, made deposits to the fund, because, you know, there are points that direct, you know, sums were put into the fund, and then the land use change tax came along later in that. It was created as a conservation fund around 1971, and then by 1994, it magically became the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund, with footnotes saying said fund shall be for the purpose of land acquisitions, conservation, or trail easements. All subsequent references to it have called it the Land Acquisition Fund. So what I did is I sort of gathered this all up, sent it over to council. I said, to my read, we can't use this for the full authority under the RSA right now because of the way we have said we're making deposits. And she said, yeah, you're probably right. She said, your best move would be to do a clarifying article this year that would allow the use of the fund as it exists for all purposes authorized under RSA 36A, under 36A, to pull all of those other features in, and that would reclass the previous deposits that went in under land acquisition. And then that would back into okay, once you've reclassed it, now the Conservation Commission would follow the process under that law for spending those funds on things such as maintenance, things such as the milfoil removal, which is what came out from the Budget Committee's conversation.
Well, why wait a second year? Why don't we just do two warrants that say that, right? The first warrant is to reclassify it the right way it should have been, the way it was originally established.
Yep.
That was the intent. And then establish the next one that says, if you exceed over $1 million, it's gonna go into another fund. Put a limit on it. I don't think
Yeah.
we should have to wait 2 years. I just, because we still have the milfoil, because that's
No.
the other side of it too,
No.
by the way. We still have the milfoil problem that we've gotta address sooner or later, and.
Right, I
maybe
mean,
another year's not gonna
these
be a
are
big deal,
two
but-
related
But two different
issues,
actions.
but not necessarily tied.
Yeah, I'm fine with two warrants. We
Yeah.
have that warrant here, which is one that Frank put up the $1 million limit, and then we have the one lower, which is
Well,
reclassified the right way.
yeah, just to clarify, because as soon as people hear $1 million limit, it's not limiting it. All it's saying is the fund will grow to this value, it'll
Yeah.
roll over into another fund, and it's still there for use.
Right, but it requires an act of the voters to authorize their use.
Correct.
And I think that's, so my thing is, I heard you say wait this year, then do, my suggestion is put both warrants in there.
Oh, if I said wait, I
And
didn't mean to.
And
so.
that brings up the other side of it too, is question around the milfoil specifically, because that's what came out of the budget committee meeting. Do we actually need a warrant? Assuming the reclassification passes,
Mhm.
do we have to have it in a warrant saying doing it? Do we even
No.
have to appropriate any dollars? Because at
No.
that point, it's coming out of they're self-funded at that point.
Exactly, they're self-funded at
And
that
I would
point.
basically say the Conservation Commission should be self-funded under that budget.
Okay.
And we wait, we show their budget, but basically show it as an offset budget.
Well, right, but why, we should show the budget. We don't show the cable committee budget today because they're self-funded.
Right,
We have a limit on what they have.
Well,
right, and you approve the use of that revolving fund.
We do, so,
yeah, but that's a different
But
issue.
right,
We control that, we control the issue with the,
they control their budget.
yeah.
The only piece, I'd want to look at their budget. I'm not sure that their budget in its entirety would move to that fund, but,
Well, administration maybe wouldn't, right? Some of their other stuff, but they're.
no, I guess I'm thinking, I'm not sure the fishing derby qualifies, but I can test that out then and see.
it says for any purpose,
Yeah,
For educating around conservation, right? It's
any
education.
purpose for conservation.
So, it sounds like we're gonna move forward, so let's structure
Yeah, I can
let's structure it correctly. That would take care of the last one there, which is the
But-
reappointment.
Do people understand what I,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm sure I don't know, I haven't met with them in a long time, but I'm sure there's some anxiety over it. I mean, I'm sure there would be. Let's make sure, let's reach out to the chair of that commission, that we are going forward with intent and why. And if they would like to talk to us about it,
Sure.
they can come to the next meeting.
yeah.
Matter of fact, I invited, if they have an objection to us going forward with it, I mean, I would rather not have them not be, I would rather them not be against it and fighting it versus, yeah, it makes sense, because I think it does make sense in the long run. They're still getting their funding, it's just, you know, the interest alone will pay for the milfoil and all their expenses.
No, I tried that theory. It might pay for their expenses, it won't pay for their milfoil. It throws off about $1,100 a year.
What do we have it in? Can't we put that stuff in, like, 6 month CDs or something like that? Would give us a little more income out of it?
You could buy some junk bonds.
No, can't the treasurer invest that in some things that would give us some more interest in it?
Not according to policy.
It's fairly limited in what it can be invested
I
in.
just,
It's not, because.
6 month CD is not, there's not a lot of risk.
Because
there,
it's held,
besides the money for-
because it's a fund that's set up by law to be held by the treasurer instead of the trustees of trust funds, your investment options are much more limited.
Okay. All right, well, good enough. All right, that strikes two different things. Next is the non-binding Article 12, or so-called 12 now, non-binding to determine the public sentiments on reduction of town hall services except police in order to decrease the government costs. I believe Frank brought it forward. I would just like a clarification. Why are we excluding police only? We should be excluding both public safety offices, fire and police, but it shouldn't say town hall services, it should say town services in general.
Well,
Is
if the board wants to shut down the police and the fire for a day, that's fine. I'm not
No,
proposing that.
I'm saying, except, I'm agreeing with the police, I'm saying the fire should be included there too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just
Yeah.
an oversight, that's
Yeah,
all.
okay, that's all, I didn't mean they shouldn't be.
I looked
agree.
at the town hall and I didn't see the police, the fire here, except for
So,
Kevin.
Yeah, okay. So I'm saying if we do structure, I think police and fire should be excluded from the exercise, but I also say I think we should be clear that it's not just town hall services, not the four walls here, it's all services being provided by the town. That means the recycling center, trash, highway services, recreation.
My only intent was just for the services out of the town hall, but if you want to expand it, that's fine too.
Again,
I think you'd have to be fair.
I think you need to be fair, but I also, the town hall knobs are very small in reference to other knobs. So if we're going to ask the people whether they want to cut services, let's ask them to cut services.
It's fine.
So, and I think it's a fair, and then obviously if they come back and say yes, then it's going to be up to us to decide what's going to be the most, effective. But I don't.
I wrote it as non-binding, simply it's a matter of trying to seek
It's an opinion, right?
an opinion from the citizens.
How much or how little do you want to flesh out? Cut services is a very vague term.
Well, it's reduction. Reduction of services.
Sure. Cut services, lower my taxes. But what does that mean?
I know, that's what I'm saying.
And-
It's,
How
how do
much are
you?
you gonna cut?
I get asking the question. I'm just trying to figure out. Do you want to?
Can the warrant be structured to say, give them examples?
That's non-binding. You can do whatever you want
So
in
if
that
you
case.
say, reduction of town services, reduction of services provided by the town, i.e. reduced recycling hours, i.e. reduced town hall hours, service hours, something like that, give them an idea what we're talking about, because if they say yes, then we gotta figure what's the right thing. That doesn't totally cripple certain things, but, because the reality of it is, you turn things, if you shut the recycling center down for a day, okay, everyone delays bringing the trash in, that means the day all the trash comes in is a little more work, right? So it means now we're paying potentially additional hours to process that trash, because that's a workflow that takes X amount of time. Same thing with, you shut down the service window for the clerk's office, it doesn't have a direct impact to our collections per se, but it will create other backups and other windows. I think we need to provide some examples, and when we talk about this, if we go forward this, when we talk about it deliberative, we need people to understand what we're talking about. And I'm sure people have ideas too, so, I'm sure during deliberative we'll get ideas also, but I'm fine personally going forward with it. I'm not sure what the result will be, but,
I think it's good. You let them decide, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I just, and this will definitely take some work to write with, because, one way you ask a very generic question of, which basically is, do you want lower taxes? Yes, he's going to say, no, please,
No, I don't think,
but I also don't want to structure the
by
cuts.
the way, I don't think it means lower taxes.
I
The reality of it is, if we, right now, we have costs going up in the police and fire, right? if we reduce costs, maybe the taxes flatten out and we don't get an increase, but it's not gonna, I don't say it's a direct, there's no direct equation that's gonna lower taxes. We're trying to live within a certain limit. And if they say, yeah, and we can, it may reduce it, but I don't think it's a given. I don't think we should say that it does. I think the point being is that, how do we control our costs? I mean, at the end of the day too, the cap going forward, the cap on the budget can essentially derive the same thing, right? We know we have costs that are going up, and if we reduce something over here that allows us to pay for that increase that we have no control over and keeps things kind of sort of flat, I don't think it necessarily equates to decrease in taxes. That's my opinion, but, and I obviously can be proven wrong too.
Okay, I'll play with it. I mean, I'm probably gonna need some other suggestions on this, because, either on one side, I don't wanna make it very generic, on the other side, I don't wanna make the implications sort of tilt the other direction to make it a negative sounding article of, no, of course I don't
No, I
want
think we
that
need to
cut,
make it as
so.
neutral as possible. I just think we need to provide some examples of what we mean by reducing services. I want to, I also want to make sure we're not going to impact public safety by any stretch of the imagination. We are going to plow the roads when the roads need to be plowed, but what would maybe potentially be described as discretionary services, which I wouldn't describe half of them as discretionary either, but being able to adopt different windows and stuff at different time, maybe reduce it. But again, those knobs aren't very big, very impactful neither. That's the only challenge. Because our biggest cost, let's say the recycling center, isn't necessarily labor per se, it's the cost of processing the trash. Right? And we're not going to reduce trash. I can't go, here's the article is, and by the way, you need to process your own trash, because that's the only way to reduce the cost there per se. But I think it's a valid question to ask. So, does anybody have objections to going forward? It doesn't sound like anybody does. So, all right.
They're all gonna say yes, by all means, because they're thinking up here, well, my taxes are gonna go down if I reduce any of the services and all.
I think that we need to make sure they understand that it doesn't necessarily equate to lower
not.
taxes, but
That much.
I don't really know how to say that, right? Because it may or may not. I mean, it may. Anyway. All right, town hall roof. It is what it is, right? I'm assuming the funding model is out of raise the taxes versus coming out of the fund balance, but we can look at that as we get closer.
No, I think any of these that have money, you go back and later, once you look at the whole list of them and say, do you want to put any fund balance to these?
All right. Health agencies, we had this last year.
Yep.
It passed, and I think we said at the time, if it passes, we just continue forward for the next couple of years and we'll go and ask again. So do we need to ask again?
Yes, based on what you guys told me when you looked at the health agency's budget.
I know, and I went back and read my notes from the thing, and I said, wait a minute, we kind of said that we'd asked, we've been doing it for years without actually inquiring from the public, and we did, and they voted on it. It wasn't overwhelming support, it was sort of, a majority, but do we go forward with the warrant again, or?
I thought it was the ability to give the citizens the option, if they wanted to increase or decrease particular health agencies that were within the
Yeah,
warrant.
yeah, I think your comments this year were talking about, tweaking perhaps the way we write the article a little bit as well to
Okay.
make that a little clearer.
I mean, I don't have any problem going forward, I thought we were gonna, let's take it as a given and go forward the way it was, but that's fine.
It seems with the amount of problems, real bad shootings and all, that mental health should not be cut, not with the problems that we're having, not just here in Litchfield or Nashua or New Hampshire, but
It'll
in
be-
general.
It'll be up to the individual voters to decide one way or the other, right?
But I wouldn't go with the idea that we should cut it. There may be some that we can cut or reduce them, not cut them entirely, but reduce them, but
Jason, did you move number 1 down to 15? Or am I seeing doubles? Yeah. 15's a duplication of 1.
How is 15 a duplication of 1?
That's what is in mine. After health agency, I guess, shall we adopt a
Refresh yours. I got rid of that. You told me that one already.
Okay. All right, next is HVAC for a town hall. Again, we got to go forward with it, right? We have our service provider talked about it. I mean, the our maintenance preventer is talking about the age of the system, the failures. We've had several failures here, some big failures. So let's understand what that is. Is everybody okay with going forward with that one?
Did they look to see if it could be repaired? Again, it's 12 years old, 13
No, it's
years old.
15, 16 years old. And
No, it's not. Wasn't opened until
It was opened in '98.
90, okay.
98, yeah,
98.
I've been
I'm
here-
thinking of
I've been here
2000, high
16 years,
school.
so I think the town hall opened up when I moved in town.
How long does it last ordinarily?
It should be longer than that.
Air conditioners last
Yeah.
longer than,
I think that, you know, as the comment from the back of the room, 30 years is probably the average lifespan. The problem is, as I understand it, and I'm not an HVAC guy, but as I understand it, the system's undersized to begin with. It's laid out in some inefficient ways. We've had some major failures. We have a continuing issue with dampness and humidity in the building because it's not processing correctly. The fresh air return's not working. There's a whole bunch of things that they've been putting Band-Aids on, so, you know, if we're gonna maintain this building and keep the building, this is one of the things we have to deal with, I guess. But we'll let the experts decide. We just gotta figure out how we're gonna pay for it in the long run.
we can't come back with the people that installed it, made the,
No, because my understanding, the decisions on how this building was built wasn't necessarily up to the contractors, it was up to the people who were overseeing them.
oh, I'll tell
Things
you, I
like
was on
studs
the
in the
committee.
walls and
We
material
were-
that was used and all that, so I'm not sure the building was built.
It wasn't built the way we asked for it to begin with. I mean, we asked for a basement, and, which would have been great for storage and so forth and
No
all.
kidding, yeah.
But that never even, the budget committee kind of poo-pooed us right out.
Yeah.
And we're
All
another.
right, so let's mature that warrant a little bit more and see
Sure.
what the numbers look like, and we're gonna pay for
Boy,
it. 16, payment improvement program. This is the program that we talked about
Right,
meetings
last
ago
meeting with
with
Jack.
about trying to finding matching funds. I think we all agreed that we gotta do something. We'll start with the match.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's good about this is that, well, it doesn't stop us from using the highway block grant,
It just,
goes back and
it just
slows it down.
supplements it.
this doesn't mean that automatically every year the highway block grant is going to be used, and we're going to give the same amount again, right?
No, you're gonna have to ask it year after year.
year.
We're not going,
But we're
okay.
trying to get ahead of the schedule if we can. I
Okay.
think if we talk about why, we show the material that we talked
Right.
about, I think, you know, we've gotta run a full press on why it's important
Yep.
to start maintaining some of these roads. All right, 17, warrant to hire MRI or similar firm to conduct a study for the police department overtime system and make recommendations for minimizing overtime, increased efficiencies, et cetera. Who brought this one forward?
Frank?
To me, that doesn't, I was on the committee when they had that go through before, and that was, it seems though that we haven't even done all of the things that were asked on that MIR.
Yeah, we have.
MRI report.
I think the last time the chief came in, we've pretty much gotten a lot of the
Yeah,
large
we
ticket.
still had some, and some that had started but
So-
not finished. I just wish that we could finish what we've done, what he
So-
recommended, and thoroughly do it and do it right when we do it.
I don't care if you hire MRI or anybody else. My point was in this,
Yeah.
is that the huge increase, or a lot of the increase in the police department budget is overtime, and a lot of the expenses overtime.
Mhm.
And I would like to have somebody take a look at how we run the department and see if we can change the way we run the department in regards to overtime, to be able to see if we can decrease that.
So, as I understand the budget and we go through it, the overtime is driven by the fact that we have excess calls, coverage, whatever. The only way to reduce overtime is to add additional resources at a non-overtime rate. So you're now looking, this potentially come out and say you need to hire, 4 more full-time officers.
I don't think that's
I'm not
necessary.
looking to say how we're gonna do it. I'm looking
No,
to
I
have
know, I'm just
somebody
saying-
independent come in
But-
and say, yeah, there may be a different methodology to running the hours of the offices. There may be such things we can do. Maybe we add somebody and gain something else. We'd have to look at it from a financial perspective, if that makes sense. If you can show that by adding somebody you save money, then I have no problem with that.
So-
But all I'm saying is, I'd like to see somebody come in to be able to do an analysis of how we do overtime to try and take a critical look at what we can change, if we can change, to make ourselves more cost-effective.
And I haven't read the previous MRI report in the past, recently. Are we at the staffing that MRI report had?
I think we're still one full-time officer short, if I remember correctly.
I just, be careful what you wish for,
I
right?
didn't think we were when we had this new one, because I thought we hired one for
We
Massachusetts
have
last year.
10. We have 10, I think we have 10 full-timers, right?
11.
Oh, we have that
11.
11 now. Okay. I just, I know when we did the MRI report before, obviously a lot of us weren't on the
But we
board
have,
at the time.
we have nine full-time, plus lieutenant, plus a chief.
Yeah, you don't count those, they're administration.
Right, well, I just want to make sure we're all
Yeah, that's where you said
on the
that.
same
I
sheet.
I unfortunately counted lieutenant, but, so I thought it was only 10. So there's 9. And I think the MRI report required 10 patrol?
That's what I'm just
We'll
looking
find the
for right
report.
now. I have,
The only reason I bring it up is because I know when the MRI report was finished and delivered before, there was a lot of hesitation there was a lot of, there was a lot of concerns about enacting all the things, all the recommendations, because there was gonna be an increase in cost. And so you get a report, if you spend that kind of money again for a report,
It's a lot of.
and it comes back and says you need to hire 3 more, and I'm just saying, it may not have, may or may not. But if it says you need to hire 2 more full-time officers to reduce our overtime budget of, say, $20,000, or whatever it is that really worth the investment?
First off, you're looking at this report or this study as being of the same magnitude as what the prior study was. That's not the intent of this. This is a particular study only to look at the way the department is handling its overtime. It's not to look at, what are the issues going on in the department. It's not to look at, morale or all of that stuff.
No, I
or
understood
procedures
that. I
and-
understood that. I got that. I
I
realize
mean,
it's
so
a very.
this study is nowhere near the magnitude of the study that was done
But
before.
does it require, here's the question, does it require an outside firm to do this, or do we go back to the department and say, how can you reduce overtime? What do you need to do it, and have them come back with their educated method of doing it? And I suspect it'll be, you're asking for a third party to do it that's neutral to the town.
I'm asking
But-
for a third party simply because every time I've asked before, if we can look at overtime and try and decrease that, I don't feel that I get the answers that I'm hoping to get or expecting to get. I get.
You don't
what
like
in
the
my-
answers, that's what the problem is. We all don't like the answers,
You can
but,
characterize it however you
Yeah.
want, John. But the response is, I tend to get blown off. I said, well, I get answers, that's the way we've always done it, there's no way you can change it, and I'd like to, fine, if that's in fact true, I'd like somebody
Well-
independent to be able to show me.
so I remember we're going through, was it 2 years ago, we went through a schedule of hours, available work hours in that department to cover the shifts of, basically patrol hours. We have X amount of patrol hours to cover, we have X amount of available hours based on the staff we had. And I think that showed you right then and there that the overtime is happening because we still don't have enough patrol hours and normal hours. So I don't know why you would say you're getting blown off. You're not getting blown off. The numbers don't work the way you want it to work, which is fine. And if the voters want to spend the money to have another third party come out and do it, fine. And I think the results may be the same that we've already gotten, and it may mean putting more people on. And I think the department runs really well the way it is. The overtime investment is, it's sometimes worldly, but
I think it's been
I'm fine with
worse.
going forward. I just, it's just spending money. We need to know what the cost would be, so we need to get a price and stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, we can get a price, I think you're not, there's, looking at this, I don't see that you're getting a big windfall of savings, especially when you reconcile with the rest of the following or not following the other recommendations that you're trying to follow in the report. That said, if the benefit comes from having a third party validate the approach and say, hey, you're actually pretty good, or, okay, here's the spot on the margin where maybe you can rethink differently, or when you get to this threshold, this is when you need to think about a new person, then you have a tool. Because Frank doesn't like the answers he's getting, and so I can say it 16 different ways, and it's going to be the same answer. So if we get another set of eyes that gives us some out of Litchfield context, maybe we can all make a better decision.
So, it's not that I don't like the answers I'm getting, I'm not getting answers, that's the issue.
No, I want to correct you there, because
No, don't correct me,
yeah, I'm
John,
going to
because
correct you
that's
there,
my
because
opinion.
I know it's your opinion, but we sat here last year, I think it was last year, when we did this whole spreadsheet exercise and went through the coverage hours and said here, and we were trying to figure out the numbers that we needed, and we all agreed the math made sense. At least I thought we did. And, you know, you got X amount of hours, you got 3 shifts a day, you got 2 patrol officers at every shift, you got overlapping supervisors. You know, the numbers are what the numbers are. So, I mean, if the third party makes sense, the third party makes sense. I think we need to understand what that, statement of work will look like, right? What are they actually looking into? And I think the chief needs to feel comfortable that it's gonna result in what we want as data, I guess. If we're only looking at how do we, make the use of our existing officers more efficient and reduce overtime, I just think the result's gonna be, you need more officers. But that's my opinion.
I know I had looked at the Hollistown report, I had a friend, and they do have more officers than we have, and they do have a smaller population than Litchfield has, I know that. And another thing, and I'm not going to bat for the police department any more than any other department, but I just think that, I don't know, it's hard to figure, but I think Litchfield being surrounded with Manchester and Nashua doesn't help us, because if you read the police blotter in the paper after, you'll notice that at least half of the people are from either Manchester or Nashua or Lowell. And I think that we're very close to those cities and that we do have a runover from there for a lot of their problems. But I can understand Frank's point of view, because I just get upset to think we have to have as much overtime in the police department and the fire department. I just think we use a lot of it, because I know that I followed a Hudson fire truck to a medical call, and only 2 officers went and 1 police car, and the police car left within minutes after and all. And I thought, if they can do it in Hudson with just 2 police firemen, why can't we do it? And I think even sometimes in that police department, we're overkill.
The police don't respond to every medical or every fire call.
Oh,
against
they
my better
certainly
judgment.
do.
No, there's a lot of times.
Not all of them.
I have direct knowledge of several calls where the PD did not respond because either they're tied up someplace else, but.
Okay, maybe there was somebody place else, but if they weren't, and they were in
And they typically clear right away too. I mean, they're there for a period of time if there's a reason for them to be there longer, but if there's no reason for them to be there, the environment's safe, whatever, they move on. But I mean, again, if the board wants to go forward with the warrant, that's fine. I just,
how much approximately do we think? I can't even remember how much we paid, but to me, it seemed like an ungodly amount, but it was a very
But to-
thorough report.
Yeah,
But
this
to
is a much
Frank-
narrower
yeah,
scope.
To Frank's point, it's a very narrow scope,
I
very
realize
specific
that.
outcome, so we're not doing peel back the onion and look at every operating fraction of the town, of the police department. We're looking at one thing: how do we reduce overtime and run the department? I don't know how you ask the question, how do you reduce overtime and run the department more efficiently if you don't peel back the onion? But if that's the boundaries we're putting into it, let's find out
Sure,
what our vendor options are, and then, an estimate of cost before we start putting the warrant together. Okay. Next is warrant article to fund the installation of, ask citizen if they wish the Board of Selectmen to pursue the installation of a stoplight at the intersection of Route 102 and Page Road. First of all, isn't that Hudson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So can we even legally do it?
that's what I said. Could we do it in Hudson? It's in the town, it's not in our town.
Well, it's a state road, I suppose.
It's a state
If we
road.
Paid the state to do it, they would do
So
it.
here's the situation. We've already had people killed at that intersection,
Yeah.
and the majority of people using that intersection are people coming from Litchfield.
Yep, agreed.
But none of
It's-
my
it's-
killed were from Litchfield. Isn't that a coincidence?
It's 10, 12 feet at most, 15 feet. Okay, maybe I'll give you 50 feet. from the town line. The problem is, we've looked at several different alternatives. We've looked at the alternative of having the state try and install something because there may be a need there. They have said no. We have looked at the alternative of trying to see if the speed limit could be adjusted, and the state again has said no. So I don't know what else to do. The situation is, I mean, I saw an accident there last week, or the week before, where they had two Litchfield cruisers there. I think they were Litchfield cruisers, if I'm not mistaken, trying to figure out the
It was part of Litchfield, actually.
the accident scene. We've had people killed there, and I guess I'm just trying to, people are, upset with this intersection, and here's an option to talk about, whether we want to do it or not, I don't know. The only way I could see that this could be done is that we somehow requisition the money and work with the Hudson and the state to somehow do it. Now, I can tell you that when Hudson put in the intersection at West Road,
Yeah.
they did get and have to pay, because the state of New Hampshire refused to pay, they did have to pay significantly more of their own share to get that done. But they also exacted a payment from the owner of the Irving gas station that was going in there at the time. So how much it would cost, I have no idea. I'm just bringing it up as an issue because there's people who want to see something done for that intersection.
So clearly, there's probably it's not gonna be easy just putting up a light, because I believe directly across from Page's home, there's some site issues, I believe, also. So there's some rework of the road I would expect.
I would expect. I don't think it's cheap.
No, I don't either. And I just, it drives me nuts that we have to pay for something that's not in our town. But I mean, I agree with the logic that we use that intersection, and there's been a lot of accidents that have been there. Does anybody know what's going on down at the end of West Road right now?
Yeah, I'm putting a water pipe in for the new, it's going to the Londonderry Retirement Community.
Oh, the ones between 102
The
and
one-
that
yeah.
one's going in
Yeah,
there? Okay.
Is that retirement community where, Kevin?
Yeah, right off West Road, you can access it through 102 across from
Or
the
is that
flea
gonna be
market.
Charbonneau's gas line?
No,
No,
his gas line's
no.
already in.
His
They
gas
put that in
line's in.
already.
There was a gas line coming into the northern one, but they were gonna run
Yeah,
a
they're put it
southern
in.
one.
It's already in.
Yeah, that went in earlier this
That
year.
went on the other side of the road, and then on this
Right
side.
on West Road, well, when you go down West Road where they cleared out, you can see where they're blasting,
Yeah.
they're blasting.
Yeah, I saw the road get cut in, and then, but there's also clearing, directly across from Irving's.
Right, they're
Where,
clearing the whole side
Bradley's
of the road.
Coming in that way, yeah, and then
there's-
going
well,
on the
there's
other side of the road.
also, looks like they're flattening the land, like they're gonna put a structure there too.
I thought it was gonna be another lane, a turn lane or something.
I thought they were gonna widen the road too, wouldn't that be nice? But, so
I don't know what to do. If the board doesn't wanna do this is fine. I mean,
I just-
I know it's expensive or whatever, and
I think we should at least inquire, and we should go and talk to the Hudson Selectmen. After all, it is in their town, and I think that,
the Hudson Selectmen, I've been informed, will most likely tell us that they don't have the money and that they aren't interested because they're looking to widen Lowell Road.
right there.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
think
the
we're
big
doing
thing
fair
is-
to our own townspeople
Yeah.
if
The
we don't
expense.
go and talk to them. I think that it's our responsibility.
I don't have a problem taking this off. I thought I'd bring it to the board's attention that
But I was the one, in fact, I'd even go around with a petition
Isn't
to
there,
every business on Litchfield's
there
line.
isn't very many there,
Hudson's.
that's the only problem.
the other option, by the way, that was discussed.
This must be something you guys schemed up, go ahead.
No, I know, this is.
I was just thinking, can't we just ask that legislator?
No, the other thing that, that Jack and I have been discussing is a different approach of don't try to make Page Road work, but change the end of, the
Albuquerque
proposed
goes
end of
straight through.
Albuquerque. I mean, Albuquerque, the unbuilt part goes out to 3A.
Yeah,
Okay, the reality is the way we probably want to get more people out of town now is not to 3A but to 102. Can we continue Albuquerque on some path to go out from where it ends now out to 102 at a signalized intersection in Litchfield with clear sight lines and kind of finish the Albuquerque project and do
It
everything.
was certainly discussed when they were doing the intersection down that way, right?
Mhm.
So, it's probably the smarter investment for us versus putting the light up, but
I mean,
that project cost is a whole lot.
if you're gonna throw a lot of money, well, I mean, but that's sort of the question is, if you get to the point where you're gonna throw a lot of money to reconfigure an intersection not in your town and put up a light not in your town, are you better off doing that and still threading people down Page Road? Or do you begin the process of, making a new end for Albuquerque that is perhaps even at a better endpoint in Litchfield onto 102?
So I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, whether you made a statement earlier that we don't want to run people on the 3A. I'm not necessarily convinced that we don't want to run people on the 3A. Because when you get on 102, where are you gonna go? You're gonna go south or you head north? I mean, if you're gonna go north, I'm gonna go down West Road anyways.
I usually avoid 102 anyway because of Alvern traffic and everything else
Right.
typically, but
So running people down on the original planned route of Albuquerque, which was down to 3A,
Mm-hmm.
may still be something that makes sense.
well, so what's the desire of the board? Do you want to continue with this on the light or just strike it for now? And what do you want to do?
Me personally, I think it'd just be too expensive, so
Do what?
I'd say trash it.
Strike the warrant or go forward with the warrant?
I think we should go through with it, and I think we should do more work, and I think we should get after the National Regional Planning and tell them that we want another one of those traffic studies done, and I'll
They're
tell
already
you.
scheduled to do one anyway.
I thought they were scheduled, I'll take care of the fall one, I'll figure out where it is.
Yeah, because I thought they were scheduled to do one in the
We were
fall.
gonna do one September, October, so we're,
We also have the engineering done on Albuquerque that was going to take it right out to Dairy Road way before, and the preliminary anyway was
And
done.
that's what Jack was resurrecting when he was talking about that extension. So,
I think it's our responsibility to at least try, and then we can't say we didn't.
but try what? A light or a fix, or provide another road access that doesn't.
Well, I
takes
think
away
we
from
should go talk to the selectmen down there to find out what they think, and then
Well-
if they don't think, we're gonna just go ahead and push it on our own, and go ahead and get a petition, and get those businesses to sign it, and make them feel like the state, 3 deaths in 3 years is quite a thing within a mile.
Here's my suggestion. I know you don't want to hear this, John.
No,
I
go
wanna
ahead.
listen.
No, go ahead. I didn't say anything.
Pat wants to listen, so I'll tell you, Pat.
Okay, tell me.
So don't tell anybody else.
Oh, yeah, I have to
But if
tell
it
'em.
was me, I would change the warrant article to basically say that the Board of Selectmen to study the issue of the intersection of Page Road and 102, and to devise, or to come back to the voters next year.
Next
With a
year.
plan, a funding
With
plan.
some type of, ideas and costs.
I might
And
be
then that
killed
keeps
in the
it, that keeps it
meantime.
open as to how you solve that issue. And it,
You'd ask everybody if there's any concern, right?
right,
I agree.
and it basically gets it in front of the voters and say, are you really concerned about this, or is this just
Right.
So let's reword the warrant that way and we'll go forward with it.
So that's
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah, I
recommendation.
think that makes sense.
That's.
You
I
had
think
two
that
over here
sounds
ready
better,
to
yeah.
strike it, and I think that's a good compromise to to understand what Pat's concerns are and get people to decide whether or not we should really pursue it, because no matter how you look at it, we're looking at a lot of work on our side, which may not materialize in anything. All right, number 19 is the reclassification of conservation. We already had a long conversation about that, so that's stay, I assume. And then 20, which is warrant request the legislative body may authorize the governing body of a municipality to appoint a capital improvement program committee, which shall include at least one member of the planning board and may include but not be limited to other members of the planning board, the budget committee, or the town or city governing body to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects projected over a period of at least 6 years. RSA, per RSA 674:5. So we need a warrant to actually create a committee to do a capital plan?
Well, this is another one of my dreams or whatever. We've been talking now, and people have been upset about the status of the capital improvement plan, or the capital improvement plan, CIP.
Oh, you're trying to divorce it from.
And basically what this would do would be to divorce it from the planning board.
Yep.
It would put it in the responsibility of the governing body to make appointments to I won't call it an ad hoc committee, but a committee that would therefore structure what the capital improvement plan would be. And the Board of Selectmen, at the direction of the legislative body, would therefore construct that committee and then manage that operation. And this is one alternative. The other alternative, which is what we're under now, is that the planning board does that.
I for one would like to see this happen, but.
I think this is more consistent with the approach that we've kind of informally been talking about. Right now, the final authority still remains with the planning board, but the tool we need is a tool for the planning board, the selectmen, and the budget committee to think about capital spending.
Yeah.
So,
And I think this puts into concrete terms and gets the approval of the citizens to basically do what the Board of Selectmen and our town administrator has suggested should be done for a couple of years.
Okay. I'm fine with it. Anybody else?
I'm fine with it.
All right, moving off, we're done with the warrants. Let's clean them up, get them out there, and see what else comes up. Next up is pay plan update. Jason, this is here, we haven't talked about it, I'm assuming this is to re-engage the conversation again.
yes.
So we started this very early on, you know, we put it on the back burner because of the budgets and so on, but we do need to kind of somehow start addressing this again. So I don't wanna belabor it tonight, but I would say that we need to have a conversation around this within the next 3 meetings.
Mhm.
So let's pick a meeting that we're all gonna go, yep, we understand it. If I remember correctly, the hang-up was the mid, the starts, the balance, how the process worked. We never really disagreed about the dollars per se, but it was always about the method, the methodology, how we rate, how people get moved through the system. And I don't feel we're any closer still, but.
Right, I mean, this is sort of my dilemma of, I put some things together, I've put some thoughts together, I've struggled to find kind of what direction you want me to go with it. I feel like I've had run left, run right, run forward, run back.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to juggle all of those, and I'm kind of getting to the point of, if we have some plans to move on this for 14, we need to figure out a budget number. And my data is getting older and older and older in all of this. You know, and we gotta do something. Or you need to say, kick the can down the road, forget the whole thing, and we're just gonna do a COLA article and be done with it. We have to do
Well,
something.
to be honest, I'd like to also see what the contract looks like coming forward too, before I discuss it. Be honest, but,
Okay.
I mean, I would like to understand what's the drivers there are,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think they're gonna be the same. I know they're two separate issues, but I think if we're gonna, well, I'm not gonna talk about it, we'll know next meeting.
Right, and again, look over this,
Let's
see what I've put together. If you have some comments or questions between now and the next meeting, that I can try to get something better
Well, I was
together.
gonna say, my scratches for next meeting's agenda is still light. I'm assuming I don't know what else you may have in your docket from the administrative side, but if it's light, let's put this on as a topic that we'll spend a half hour talking about it.
And I suggest you delay it until at least after the November 4th meeting.
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, that's right, yeah, that's when we're doing the meeting. So, yeah, let's put it on the November 4th meeting after the non-public, I guess.
Okay.
In the meantime, let's go through his notes, let's get him some other feedback, if there is any other feedback. I think we've kind of labored through it a lot.
I've had meetings with him, like 2 to 3 meetings with him, of at least an hour apiece, giving him ideas.
I know. And I'm assuming he's adopted some of your ideas.
And I've
No,
even,
he hasn't even, he's blown me off again.
oh, come on now,
I
you
want
have a
another
problem.
warrant article that says MRI to come in.
Yeah. Well, you don't want that either.
Maybe there's a
Well,
fifth Monday.
you know, doing these is actually what I used to do for MRI.
Yeah, let's. All right, moving on. So we'll talk about this on November 4th's meeting. We'll have this as an item. We'll spend time against it. But between now and then, obviously, if you have any questions, you don't understand it, get the questions out there. Let's get it answered, okay? let's have a healthy discussion then. And I know I've said that before, the last time this came up, so, it is what it is. All right, there is, I meant to bring this up as another item, because it's not here, but I want to talk, or did I do that? Oh, other item was regarding the 911 recording system, so I want to put that in here also, and we'll talk about it. But, so, we have the other items, building committee. Back in, was it August?
Oh, it was earlier than that.
July.
Probably
So the
July.
board has authorized an impanelment of a building committee to look at the public safety buildings, and sort of the building asset needs in general. And one of the things that Jason had brought up to me was, although the committee has been paneled totally yet, because the budget's been what the budgets are, and we haven't had time to focus on that yet. We do know we're gonna need funding for something down the road if we go to follow this process. And so there is a recommendation from the office to encumber impact fees from police and fire, just to encumber so that we don't lose them, because there's a lot that are gonna start expiring at some point in time. If we don't use them, they just fall back and they would go back to wherever they were if we don't end up using them, but holding on to them, kind of sequestering them for now, so we have the money to proceed with whatever the committee comes out with as a direction to kind of explore. As everybody knows, the original designs that we have are just sort of fire focused and fire PD focused, not town hall. I think there's a lot of open issues that we gotta kind of discuss. I don't know what will come out of that, as far as what the recommendation will be, but you know whatever plan, especially if we wanna go forward, we're gonna need some kind of funding to refresh the plans, do site evaluations, those kind of things, so. Again, so the recommendation was to take 12.5 out of each one of those funds, allocate it for this committee to use for the purpose of developing a plan. And then, again, if it doesn't get used, it would just fall back and get returned if we don't use it. So we're looking for 25?
Yeah, I mean, our best estimate when we had a conversation with somebody was 25. And ultimately, I mean, what part of this is mechanical. We're not trying to get you to agree to hire somebody or do anything like that. It basically was kind of the fear that came up. You know, Karen pointed out, she said, you know, you've talked about this committee. You have money that's going to start going back this month if it's not committed. We talked about setting this committee up in the summer, and all of a sudden, you know, here we are, we have money going back. So the idea would be restrict the funds now, so they're available. Ultimately, you know, if a decision is made, hey, we need to hire somebody, that needs to come back and the board needs to say, yeah, this is an appropriate
Authorize
use and authorize the release of those funds for that purpose. But we're trying to just sort of freeze the funds so we have them available for this committee. I don't want to impanel a committee and find that we've now given back the money they need.
Well, we have no funds to actually
Right.
work. So like I said, the request is for 25,000, which would be broken up between the impact fees of police and fire at 12.5 apiece.
Has anybody checked with town council to confirm that we can encumber impact fees? In the past, town council's advice to us, and I admit it was a different town council, was that we needed to have a purpose, and we needed to have a invoice in hand to do encumbrances.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm not sure how you encumber this without the purpose and actual expense understood at this time.
So we can't do anything to set aside the funds without any...
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I just assumed that we could, but I guess we didn't explore it that well.
Yeah, I mean, if you want that level of detail, we can chase that level of detail. I
I think
mean,
it's a fair question,
you know, I mean,
I-
I have a proposal that I got in hand last November when we first started dealing with this, you know, and I have a proposal of $21,650 to do the needs assessment preliminary design for both facilities.
So in your mind, we actually have a proposal, an invoice per se. We're not gonna act on it, but we have a...
Yeah, I didn't pull that number out of thin air. I have a number here from SFC Engineering that says, you know, that was a November 2006 price of $21,650. I wouldn't ask you to commit to that because I pulled one out of the air. I haven't done anything competitive or the like. But, you know, this recommendation comes from a real number and a real proposal.
Okay.
So Frank, do you believe we still can't go forward with even that kind of data, or that invoice? I don't think it's gonna hurt waiting another meeting to ask council if that sounds like it's okay, but my guess is council's gonna say yes, but I don't, that's probably, I'm not sure what they'll say actually.
What are we buying?
We're not buying anything. If you remember, the board, the committee has been impaneled to go off and explore what the options are to deal with the fire department issues down in their facilities, and then potentially looking at the overall town asset, the town facilities, and, come up with a plan that makes sense to resolve some of the space issues.
Okay.
And so this, as you already know, the fire department already started looking at revamping their fire department plans. That's where that quote came out of. Basically, kind of refreshing what we originally talked about up here, when we had that combined building. We're not sure that's the right direction anyway, but we know we have some funds that are gonna need to be expended to develop those plans if the committee agrees with the direction and we get the buy-in from the Board of Selectmen to proceed.
Well, I guess just my own thoughts on it are, I don't know whether we can do encumbrance of impact fees. That's something that I would be interested in hearing council's opinion on. Without knowing, and without knowing what we're getting for the 25,000, I don't know why you would encumber the money anyways. If you could, provided town council says that's something you can do. I guess my thinking is if we send the money back, then we send the money back, and that's what we're supposed to do, and we should put the accelerator down on the building committee and try and see if we can come to some need or some defined need at some point in the near future, if that's the desire.
Would love to put the accelerator down, but if you remember, the committee was established with the assessment of the two chiefs in a department, each department appointee, and then two public officials. The two chiefs are busy with the budget and stuff, so we haven't been able to get together for it. Now that we're getting past that budget window, we're gonna start talking about it moving forward. Again, I have no problem. If the board doesn't wanna do anything with it and we let the impact fees go forward, that's fine. I think that committee's gonna come back and say, look, we've done all this work, we've gotta refresh some of these plans, there's gonna be some expenditures required, how do we pay for that? And, obviously, use of impact fees would seemingly make sense based on the fact that it's an expansion and so on, but, I'll defer to the board with the desire. So if there's no desire to proceed, it still sounds like it would make sense to get an opinion from council. We'll make no motion to do anything tonight. Get an opinion from council if that's even possible, based on what we have for past recommendations or past cost estimates. And if we can do that. If we can't, we can't. And as Frank said, if it goes back, it's so be it. We'll deal with it. Okay. Is that fair?
I mean,
I'm asking the board, the collective board, is that fair to go with that process?
I think
We'll take no action. We do recognize that the committee will require some kind of funding at some point in time to develop any reasonable plans to bring forward to the voters, if they do decide to do anything. Okay, so you'll go to council, ask the question, we'll take no action tonight, and we'll hear council's feedback next meeting.
or go to NHMA.
Let's go, you can go to both if you want.
I will repost what I shared last November from SFC, just to kind of refresh it, to give you the sense of kind of what we were talking about.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, so the other thing on the other items, because I stupidly forgot to bring it up, and I'm going to insert it here by my prerogative, I guess. A couple weeks ago, or maybe more than a couple weeks ago, I presented the issue with the 911 recording systems, both audio and video system, over to PD. As I said at that point in time, the system had been failing. It's been stable, but it has failed. It's been failing more so over the last few weeks. We've already had an incident where we were unable to do a I'm going to say interrogation, but an interview with a couple of perps. In our interview room, we had to actually do it in the jail, and there was some pushback from legal attorneys and stuff like that. Why were you doing it there? It just is not. It's not going well if we need to do the audio and short audios there. So basically, I said I was gonna come back, it's got to the point now where I really can't keep it going, and it's becoming less and less reliable as it was, as I said earlier. So I'm asking this board to authorize the purchase of the unit based on the quote that we provided several months ago and that we authorized. We put $35,000 in the IT budget this year. I will tell you that the budget committee hasn't made one decision one way or the other, but they'll pull it out and put it to warrant, which is fine. But we're at that point now, we can't wait till till March to resolve this problem. It's gonna fail, and it's gonna fail hard, and we're not gonna have any use at all.
Well, two questions.
Mhm.
Number one, when you say it's going to fail, why are you saying it's going to fail? And number two, Jason, earlier in this meeting, constructed a scenario where we're going to end the year with $70,000.
Yeah.
And I want to know whether Mr. Hawk, as Siri calls him,
Mhm.
has been able to add that 30,000 into the 70,000, which means are we now down to 40 or are we still at 70?
Well, we have 24,000 sequestered already from the return that we put aside for some purpose that we kind of talked about.
Return?
The property liability
The
stuff.
2010
Yeah.
surplus.
So we put aside 24,000. That's when we brought this subject up at that point because we were going to potentially use it. We didn't allocate it to this, but put it aside for some future use.
So that's 24,000, and this is how much, 30?
This is 30,000 installed. So it would
So
be-
there's an additional 6,000.
yeah.
I'm a lot more comfortable
He's coming
with
with
6,000 than I am
But
30,000.
was that included in your calculation?
No, it hasn't been
Not
included
the
yet.
6.
No, 6 hasn't been included. That said, I can see the exchange easily for a place where we're saving money where we can cover that 6. I'm not comfortable saying take the whole 30. But if part of the reason, the 24, we said set it aside was because we were trying to find a way to deal with this issue, hoping we'd find, some other solution. But
Is that working now? The system?
No, actually, the audio in the interview room's not working at all anymore. How much I kick it, it won't turn on. So, it is what it is, but,
How old is it?
it dates back to at least 98. The audio system dates back even further than that. It looks like it came over from the original police station. Both systems are no longer manufactured. Both companies Exicom, the audio system is still there, but they don't make that system anymore.
Right.
And they don't service it. The video system is not made, the company's no longer in business. The assets are bought up by another company. And it's not repairable. I mean, I think if you go back to what I talked about last time was, we talked to both companies about, can we get it fixed? Is there any way to put a Band-Aid on it? We really don't have the money. They said, yeah, ship back, we'll have it for a month, maybe we can, maybe we can't. There's no guarantees, but then we're out with it for a month. We have no way of dealing with stuff that goes on in the station at that point.
Has this been put out for competitive bid?
So this is a state bid already, and this is a single source. This is a system that's commonly used by a lot of departments around. We evaluate a couple different systems. They're all around the same price. It's not a lot, but it is a state bid. And I have a call into them. I'm trying to get them to lower the price, the installation cost down a little bit, but, they didn't return my calls today.
Are they installing it or are we installing it?
They would be installing it, but the fact is, I could rip the old one out and save them some work and maybe save some dollars, but I don't know. We'll see what they're up to. The system is, it's FBI certified, it's, evidence entry kind of stuff, so there's a lot of, they want to be able to make sure it works when they plug it in.
So what's the status, one of the question I originally asked, what's the status of the current system?
So
You
the-
said it's failed?
Yeah, so the 911 audio side, the one that records the phone side, we have one,
Let me interrupt one quick question.
Sorry.
When you say 911 audio, all I have is a vision of somebody calling on the phone, and it doesn't sound like that's really what you mean.
so there are two systems this thing will take care of. There is the phone recording system, which records all calls coming into the police department, and then there's the video and audio recording for the interview rooms and the jail. The audio system, the actual one that's doing the phone line recording, has a couple dead channels, and we're down one line because it's not working. The video system is the actual interview room no longer has audio, and we're unable to reestablish it. And then what happened just the other day was the jail lost audio.
We reset the system again, it came back online. The problem is that when the officers bring somebody in, they don't know if it doesn't have audio or not. They find out after they go to retrieve the video for evidence, and they can't, there's no audio. So, you know, again, the issue is that when it fails, if it fails hard, I can't get it fixed. The vendors don't even want to take a call about it anymore.
What's the problem with it, do you know? Right now?
Well, they tell me it's just the software is out of date, they don't make the software anymore for it, so the video system, they think is a software problem, but they don't write that software anymore, it's no longer being produced.
You
So
can get software for Commodore 64.
that's what it looks like it is. It runs Windows 95 in the background, so it is what it is. There is potentially there's cards in there to take the data feeds in. There's potentially a bad card. They don't make
Run
it
it off a
anymore.
Raspberry Pi.
If you want me to build you a Raspberry Pi DVR, I'll
I
do
have
that
one.
for you. I can do that too, but I don't think you want me building anything else for you. So anyway, so at this point,
It's dead now, and
well, I resurrect. So the dead channel the dead channel in the jail is back online since I resurrect that one, but I still have audio issues in the interview room. And as I said, and I don't want to get into all the details, but having a suspect in the jail being interviewed casually is not being well taken by the defense attorneys that are associated with it. You know, you're intimidating kind of thing versus the kind of relaxed mode.
so Mr. Hawk,
Mm-hmm.
where would you take the $6,000 from in the existing budget?
I would probably take the 6,000. First place that would come to mind would be
Legal
Your
services.
salary?
Legal services.
legal services.
Yeah.
Yeah, legal expenses. We're trending well below the 40,800 this year.
What's the line item for that?
4153.
Dot.
Oh, three dot something. Hold on.
We know it's not something.
Let's, I don't know, 310, 315. Hold on a second. Or 320. 4153, 10, 320.
10.320.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 30 even?
It's $30,424 even. That's
And,
30424.
and what we had received was 24,000 from,
I think that's what we put aside was 20.
We set aside 24 and something, so
and that was from what?
that was the return, the health trust surplus from 2010.
So, 6,000.
Yeah, I would use numbers if you're trying to craft numbers in a way that is, you know, the entirety of the fund, the 2010, of approximately X money, because it's now sat there and is carrying interest with it. And then the balance of approximately 6,000 to come from legal.
500.
What?
6,000.
Yeah. The balance,
That's the right number.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen hereby appropriates the amount of approximate amount of $24,000 plus whatever interest has accrued from the Health Trust 2010 Return Fund, and also appropriates from Legal Services account 4153.10.320, $6,500 to be combined both for the purchase of a next generation recording platform.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
That's fine.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Aye. Motion carries 301. And I'm abstaining obviously because
Mhm.
you're just creating me more work.
Yep.
Which is fine. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying. This fixes my problem.
For precision, in case you're wondering, prior to setting those funds aside from the health trust surplus, it was $24,708.24.
So note that in the minutes.
There should be sufficient funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll do my best, like I said, I gotta call on them, I'm gonna try to get the cost even lowered even more, so we'll figure out what we can do. But it's gonna take me 30 days to get a system in anyway, so I'm looking at 30 days of pain.
If we can't interview individuals,
Yep.
we gotta do something.
Right. I agree. Okay, moving on, selectmen reports.
Wait, hold on, before that train leaves the station. Can I get you to go against my previous thought of monkeying around with budgets, and can I get you to modify your recommended budget for IT to remove this 30,000?
Oh, so, yeah, so we need to make a motion to open it up, right? So it's 4150,
4150.20, and it's line 740.
alright, so.
To remove $35,000 from that line and set that line at $6,050.
Okay,
And to take a new bottom line for the information technology budget to $48,844.
alright, I'll make a motion that we reopen, 4150.20, line 740. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Budget's reopened, I'll make a motion that we reduce that
Take a
seven,
vote on your.
oh, sorry, you're rushing through it myself. All in favor for reopening the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 400. I'll make a motion that we reduce line 740 by $35,000, which would make the new number 6,050.
6,050.
6,050. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Bork. Mr. Jewish is a second slower. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. So the motion carries 301. Now for the new bottom line of 4150.20. It's 48,000, say it again, Jason?
48,844.
48,844, okay. I'll make a motion that we approve and send to the budget committee a new bottom line number of $48,844 for account 4150.20. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Jewett. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 400. I just broke my trend because I made the motion to reduce it, which is a good thing, but I had to vote for it. I can't go against my own motion. All right, so now I'll communicate, well, can you do up a new sheet for them and send that over to them?
Yep.
And I'll communicate that to the chair tomorrow, let them know that we did reduce it.
Everyone who has electronic sheets will see it already on their sheet.
Or that I'll run it
And
on the
then, yeah.
paper, but let's just send them a new sheet. All right, thank you, board members. Appreciate it. All right, we all set for this? We can go on now?
Yes.
Selectmen reports. Any reports from any selectmen?
I went to the conservation meeting, last Thursday. And we talked about a milfoil on Dara Pond and some of the other places in town. It's a short meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Mr. Byron? Anything?
Nothing, there's a, planning board meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, here at the town hall.
Okay. Mr. Bork?
Got a few things on rec on October 21st, which is, I believe, this Monday coming up. They're having their first Winterfest planning meeting. They are looking for volunteers. It's going to be here at Town Hall at 6:30. And another thing I wanted to mention was on Thanksgiving Day, they are looking to have a town-wide flag football game. It's going to be the North versus the South. There's supposed to be more details coming. I don't have those yet, but when I do have those, I will share those with you, and that is all I have.
I thought I saw an advertisement go up for the November 2nd or something like that for it. Thought I saw it on November 2nd for the North versus South.
It's Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, really?
That's what I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything could change at one point in time, I suppose. Cool. I wasn't at the last budget meeting, but I heard the meeting went really well, so no real issues, I guess. There is a budget meeting this Thursday, 7 o'clock at the Campbell High School Resource Room. And you didn't bring up, but just to make a note, there is a open house at the Fire Rescue Department, Litchfield Fire. So if anyone's interested, on October 19th from 1 to 4, the station will be open for the public to come in and participate in the different events and things. So it should be a fun day. If you have an opportunity, please head on down. More details are available both on their Facebook page and our website, I believe. So we'll get more out there. That's it for selectmen reports. There's no items moved from consent. Other business, there was, we talked about conservation, right? So you go with the conservation budget piece?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what your decision was on that, whether we're going to do that next year as a budget item, or whether the board is going to do that this year.
To wipe out their budget and have it all come from the fund?
Right.
Until you reclass the fund, until you reclass the purposes of the fund to allow
That's
it.
what I thought.
Yeah, so I think you're gonna have to lag a year on that.
Okay.
But the reclass and the use, that's all happened. The limitation, the roll to another fund, and the reclass are two different warrant articles.
Mhm.
Okay. And then I think, Frank, you had another one about town council billing?
Yeah, I was looking at the billings tonight, as in billings from vendors, and one of them is obviously town council. And one of the things and I'm sure Mr. Hope can address it with them, is just making sure they're not too specific on their billing information
Oh, because it's
coming
public.
to the town.
Probably too much data, people can probably can confer what actually they're talking about.
Okay, sure.
Just take a look at it and see what you think. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. They're usually, if,
Accounts payable,
Yeah.
not payroll. We're on the
if
bottom.
something caught your eye, this last one, let me know. I mean, the ones we had from Mitchell were pretty small, so
No, I know.
okay.
There are other ones in there as well from,
Oh, yeah, I have no stake in those
and I know
bills.
you can't,
That's,
I understand.
that's the tail wagging the dog with Upton.
Right.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No, that's it.
All right, I had one, I just wanted to kind of suggest something to the board. Past couple of meetings, we've had some discussions about public input and what it means and how we run our meetings and so on, and I'm not trying to change the way and flow that we do it today, but I do, one of the messages I heard is people don't know. And one of the things I wanted to do is clarify our meeting details on the website to kind of nail down what we do. This is the wording that I was proposing that we put up on the website. It builds off what we already have on the website today, but it would say under our meeting details, the Board of Selectmen meets the second and fourth Monday night of each month unless otherwise specified in advance. All meetings are open to the public and are held at the Litchfield Town Hall, 2 Liberty Way, in the Town Hall Conference Room, unless otherwise announced. The meetings start at 6 p.m. and are broadcasted live on LCTV, Channel 22, and available on LCTV on demand. And agendas and minutes are also posted on the town website. This is the part I want to add. Members of the public, whether Litchfield residents or not, are welcome to address the board during public input period that starts no earlier than 6:30 p.m. And basically by saying that, at 6:30 p.m., if we're in the middle of business, we'll stop, we'll go to public input, and we'll, at wherever the right time is, but after 6:30. You won't go early, you won't go later. I mean, we'll go later, but just to give a time of people can target. Guests may speak on any topic, which we typically allow anyway. They are, however, asked to limit their comments to no more than 5 minutes. Again, that's the chair's, I think at the chair's discretion, but we'd like to keep it to 5 minutes and that we reserve appropriate public meeting decorum. And then I go on and say, periodically, the Board of Selectmen holds public hearings on specific issues. These hearings are often scheduled later in the evening. If you wish to speak at a public hearing but cannot stay late enough to do so, at the scheduled time, you may address the board at the time of public input. So it's just, again, all I'm trying to do is clarify that, yes, we may have more input than not, but we're gonna say that our normal public input for anybody who wants to come in, to address the board, at 6:30 we'll have it,
It'll be at 6:30 a little later, but it'll always not be before 6:30, so that we don't have, nothing in front, go through public input and then have no opportunity at the end, and so on. So I don't know if anyone has any objections to that, or if that sounds like it's okay. It's my understanding that it's up to the chair how they want to construct the agenda, but I'd like to at least clarify.
My
how we do
only
it.
concern with that is that people who are candidates for office should not be allowed to come in front of the board and do a candidate speech.
Okay, I can add that, excluding any
I'm not sure if you understand what I mean, but
candidate speech.
in other words,
Come in and
they,
announce their candidacy,
Somebody running for
whatever.
senator
Yeah,
or
okay.
whatever.
that seemed to be a controversial issue
Yes,
2 years ago,
actually, this last year. I think it was.
last
Yeah,
year or
yeah,
whatever.
my own fault. Yeah, I can add that in there too. So is everyone okay with defining sort of a time that we'll have public input so that people know when it is? It's not at the beginning of the meeting, so people who can't get here at 6 o'clock, it's after 6:30 or 6:30 and after. The intent is, we'll stop wherever we are in the meeting at a reasonable point, that logical break, but we won't have won't have public input until after 6:30.
Just a dumb question. There was, I understand, a issue brought up at the last meeting, which again, I wasn't at, concerning why not have 2 areas of public input. What's the problem with that?
There is none real problem with that.
Okay.
We dropped the public input. I'm trying to define it when the public input will be. If there is a room full of people in the meeting, just like you have in the past, we'll invite people to, especially if they show like they want to ask questions or have a comment, we'll do that. But typically, there isn't anybody here, and we haven't had a second public input for many years.
So we're having one input from now.
We have one defined input, again, as I said,
6:30.
as I said to the folks who brought the issue up, if they're standing here and they want to make a comment, I certainly will open the floor to them. Always have and always will. But I also want to note that, for the folks who may not know when our public input is, they know that we'll have it after 6:30. That'll be our scheduled time. That's how it'll be published in the agenda. If we have nothing prior to 6:30, we'll do the business meeting, and they'll come in when they come in at 6:30. It's just, again, just trying to make sure folks know when we're potentially going to have it, so they can get here and do their thing. I originally said 7:30, but then there are meetings we don't go to 7:30, and I wanted to define a time that I thought was not in the middle of the meeting, but not at the beginning of the meeting, so I thought we'd try this for a while and see if we get any feedback one way or the other. And like I said, I'll put this up on the website under our meeting area details, just to clarify the point. We'll post it up on Facebook, so if anybody who follows our Facebook stream and Twitter stream, they'll see that also, that, if you want to join the party and have input and you want to speak to your elected officials, this is the time that you would come. So that's the only intent. Make sense?
I think you'll probably find controversy with that. I think they'd rather have it at the end of the meeting. But that way there are people who want to come in and talk and have something specific. Well, they want it early maybe too.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if the room has this folks in the room after we get through, like, it's 9:30 now. This is a late night for us over the last few months anyway. It's been a late night. If there's still folks here at 9:30 who want to talk to us, then obviously open the floor to them if we can. But what is it? I would say 99.9% of the time there's no one else in the room at this hour. They've said they've come up, and if they had business with it, they brought it up front. I just think this gives a little bit, at least an opportunity to say, this is when it'll be. If you stay later and have a comment at the end, again, at least I as chair, I have no issue with opening the floor to them. And I know some folks on the board have different opinions, but I'm quite okay with it if that's the case. And again, I only ask for whoever is speaking, that they're respectful and they respect the job that we have and the hour and the subject that we're talking about. So, I don't think I need a motion to do it. I just want to make sure the board's okay with it in concept and see how it works. Unless someone tells me I do need a motion to do it. I think it's up to the chair to define the agenda, and I'm just trying to clarify my motion, my intent going forward. Okay? So we'll do that. I'll get it updated, we'll get an article out so people know, and we'll see how it goes. And I welcome the folks who,
that have expressed the issue around the public input, if this doesn't help it at least a little bit. All right, that was it for all the business. I don't see anything else. I've been watching you scrolling on a piece of paper, so I just assumed you would want to speak. So, just like I said in the meeting, I will open the floor for public input. Jason, I will ask you to, I would ask you to keep it under 10 minutes. Oh, yeah, easy. Okay, I was gonna say 5, but I thought that was gonna be holding it back on you. Please have a seat, your name and address, and,
Jason Gretel, 11 Perry Court, and thank you for the public
Welcome.
input. It's very appreciated. I think Chris's point was that the way you're defining it now is perfectly fine. But I think the citizens' point was that there would be like a sub thing saying, and oh, by the way, if there are people here, we'll allow them to speak, just so they knew they had the opportunity. The other thing was thanks for clearing up the meeting posting of the last meeting, because again, it was no, you handled it exactly right, and thank you very much for doing that. Just a point of, I know you had a long discussion about the what used to be the local government center. The school board last week before, the superintendent has decided to not sign, or he doesn't believe they should be participants in the New Hampshire School Board Association any longer. It's $5,000 or $6,000, and they're going to use that money for something else because they don't provide. Just like Frank was making the case, they couldn't figure out. So where that goes will be interesting, but the superintendent doesn't even think he should do it, so I thought that was interesting. Number of warrant articles that you guys place on a ballot, place as many as you feel you need to. I'm not afraid of standing there for 10 minutes, checking off boxes, because you can leave at any point. If I only have time for 2, I'll go 2 and then go home. But if I choose to stay there for 30, I'll stay there for 30. So don't ever be afraid of putting things in front of the voter. And if you could post as a draft what the proposed warrant articles are on the website, that'd be great, so we can actually see them and come speak to you about what our thoughts are. We were talking about general fund and town hall paint. If there's excess to go paint the town hall after folks said no last year, just send the money back to the taxpayers and then put it back on the warrant and let people decide again, because they said no. So don't. I know we do that sometimes, or we want to do that, is they said no, but we have money at the end of the year. I would myself would rather see it offset taxes, and then you come back and ask us again, rather than just go do something after the no means no the next year and go do something.
just to clarify, we didn't raise any money, we had no money put aside for us, there's nothing to return.
I understand. I'm just using the point in the discussion you guys were using that the example you used was you could maintain the town hall through general fund. You could use the general fund to go paint the old town hall
Right.
if you wanted to.
Yep.
Not this year, but in a subsequent year.
We have
That
to
you could
ask the
find it
voters-
in the budget.
We have to ask the
you can't.
voters for that permission.
Okay. I misunderstood what you were saying, but you could use end of year
You
funds
can't, you could use end-of-year funds that are from the budget,
from the budget. That's what I meant to say, and that
provided that there's no means no issue.
right.
Right, and there is this year, so we can't do that.
I know. But what I meant to say was the end of year funds would go into the general fund, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. Or you would go do fund other things
but just
that,
to be clear, end-of-year funds that are unspent out of a budget
Right.
do not go back to the taxpayer.
correct,
They go into a savings account for the town.
correct, the general
and
fund,
sit there.
correct. Or you could use them to
We
offset.
already offset taxes by.
Fund, we're playing a little fast and loose with some of the
The terms.
terms late
Yeah.
here. They go to the fund balance, which
Right.
is different than the general fund.
Right.
And I think the
That's what I
comment,
meant.
the
I'm
comment that John was intending was we could ask a new article next year asking the voters perhaps to use some of the fund balance.
Right.
Sounds correct.
Right.
To pay for one of those.
Right.
So that's.
Which
Okay.
means we take what's in
And
our
that's
bank,
fine.
we take what's in our savings account, and doesn't raise taxes.
And
but
that's
we need authority
that's
to appropriate.
perfectly what I was asking, is you ask the voters, and if they
We
say no.
can't do without the voters' appropriation.
Perfect. The other question was, we were talking about the conversation was kind of in a bubble, in that, what do we do if there's an emergency? It had to do with the wastewater issue, and if you had to pay to get that done because the EPA required you to. Conversation was, well, what do we cut at that point? Well, businesses have to make that decision every day, and what it does is it changes your way of thinking, in that what are your long-term costs that you can't deal with. And the first thing that came to my head was, well, what companies do is they change benefits. That's what happens, is the people take it because that's just the way it is. Where's the money is in labor. And so we have, with the ACA coming up, I'm not sure what our benefit plans are now, but many municipalities are going to end up with a luxury tax on top of it. So I don't know if we qualify that here. I know the school
No,
does.
we
We have
don't.
less than 30 employees in the town.
No, I know, but it's how much its value is
No.
per employee.
No,
'Cause the school did.
We're still not subject to
We've
that.
already deferred a lot of the cost back to the employees.
All right, good deal. Well, those are the hard choices that have to be made necessarily, is what kind of benefit packages do we offer? And I only in civil employment do they exceed a lot of times what we get and have to pay for. Let's see, the other thing I was going to advocate was, I told this to the school the other day, was a facilities management professional that the town pays half and the school board pays half, and that person's role in the town is to actually manage the facilities. So when you're talking about capital improvement, whatnot, there's an actual person who's in charge of facilities throughout the town and can understand, it's kind of what I do. I wouldn't want the job, but it's what I do, with multiple buildings and whatnot, and that's, in my opinion, it's something you might want to think about. In my small town, you were talking about understanding overtime for the police department. My town, where I grew up, 6,500 people, they have a sergeant and 4 full-time officers. So they get it done. So, we have 10, 9, 10, whatever. The point is same crime statistics, you look at the police blotter, it's the same. Yeah, I know a report says you got to have this, you got to have that, but how does my hometown do it with 4 full-time officers? Impact fees, you've had 6 years. Those funds have been frozen for 6 years. So if you haven't, the penalty is you got to give them back. If you didn't decide what to do with them in 6 years, don't worry about giving them back. That's what the law is for. Just give them back.
And just to clarify, we do give them back on a regular basis.
Of course you do. But we're looking to encumber them. And we asked, there was an article to possibly to ask to proceed to whether we want to look into putting up a stoplight in someone else's town. I'd much prefer that a warrant article be asked to proceed, if we're interested, in getting a new town municipal building, which is we're not talking about that, but we'll talk about asking the voters that, let's ask the voters if they want us to put up a stoplight. How about we ask the voters if we want a new town facility before you even go spend a dime? Just ask them. Do you want us to go investigate putting up a whole new building in this town that'll cover police and fire? Are there any citizens on the building committee?
There will be.
Okay.
As you heard me, there hasn't been impaneled
I
yet.
didn't hear-
I know you
yeah.
volunteered, you got my response. When it gets impaneled.
No, I know. I'm just curious. I hadn't heard, and I didn't know if you guys
As I
had
said
settled
to
on
the
it.
board, we jumped on and tried to do it, then the
Yep.
department heads are already booked up doing budgets, we're just finally getting out of that mess, we gotta start thinking. about
Right.
it. And our intent was not to bring anything forward in 2014. It was
No,
to bring
understood.
Concepts in 14.
From when you're sitting out here, it sounded like you need a building committee so that we can get that done, and I need the impact fees because we want to encumber them because that's coming, like it was a certainty.
Sure.
And it really isn't a certainty because people in town haven't voted for it. And to spend $25,000 on a project that the town hasn't even said go do yet to me is ahead of the, it's kind of putting.
It's the cart before the horse, but
Yeah.
every time we bring any of these kind of scale projects ahead of us, the first thing they ask is, what is it gonna cost?
Right.
We won't be able to make
You don't
this
know.
without having an engineering study done. So-
Agreed, and that's why you ask them, do you even want one? And if you do, then you go asking for the funds, because, you could be dumping $25,000 for something that'll never pass in the end anyway, regardless if it's 1 million or 10 million. You gotta ask people if they're willing to, because they're gonna have scale, their house costs what it cost, and so it's gonna be a lot more than their house. So you're, talking millions of dollars. Do you want to put up millions of dollars for a new fire, police, town hall, whatever it is? They understand millions of dollars. All I'm saying is don't waste 25 before you even know they want it. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else who want to share any other public input? Hearing none, I'm gonna close public input. We have completed our agenda. If there's no other business for the board, I'll take a motion. 9:30, guys.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
A motion made by Mrs. Jones, seconded by Mr. Bork. Discussion, none. All those in favor for adjourning, say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 4-0-0. Thank you, folks. Our next meeting will be 21st?
right?
No, 28th.
28th, sorry. Our next meeting will be October 28th at 6 o'clock Town Hall. Have a good night and have a good week.